T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
TK Trinidad, let's talk about it, let's talk about it, hey. TK Trinidad, let's talk about it, let's talk about it.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to Combos with TK. It's been a minute. I know. We'll see what 2023 brings. However, I really want to do this because I've been seeing a lot of different things online, and I just wanted to, and I've been in the comments kind of clearing things up that I know for sure about because I was there. However, what I'm really happy about is that I was able to meet a lot of great people. So what I'm referring to is the People versus Daystar Patterson, aka Tory Lanez. And I was there for 10 days and I met some really great people. And one of those people was a lawyer, Alfie Patterson. Hey.
Hey, TK, how's it going?
Good. And the reason why I want to do this is that I've seen a lot of people have questions, and I even had questions. And let me just say that bow down to you. The moment I met Alfie, she said, hey, he's guilty and it's a wrap. She said it from the beginning. And, I doubted because, I'm not a lawyer, but I figured the jury aren't lawyers either. And I felt there was a lot of holes in the case. So we're going to break it down little by little, bit by bit, so we all have a full understanding of what truly happened for that case. As far as what truly happened that night, I don't think we'll ever know exactly what happened, but it is what it is. So
yeah. To clarify, I didn't say he was guilty. I said he'd be convicted.
Isn't that what's the difference?
There's a slight difference. Like you said, we'll never know what happened that night, and what happened that night is whether or not he's guilty, whether or not he did it. Mm-hmm. But I said he'd be convicted, as in the jury would find him guilty. What happened that night, you're right, we'll never know.
Right.
But I knew from the beginning the defense had a lot of challenging facts that they were not going to be able to overcome. So I knew he'd be convicted.
Yeah, there were some things that I was looking at after the fact because I had to take a real pause after that day and then look at certain things and then realize like, oh, okay. There were some emotions in it versus what was really transpiring during that court case. So let's take it all the way back. It did happen. It did take over about 2 weeks, but prior to that, they had to decide on the jury, and you were there for them deciding the jury the week before. So what happened there?
Right. So I was there for day one of the jury selections, and it's called voir dire. So it's basically when each side gets to ask potential jurors a series of questions. So they ask them about their background. They ask them like, what type of job do you have? Do you have children? How old are they? They ask a lot of hypothetical questions just to get to know a little bit more about the juror. And during that time, each side can decide that they have a certain number of people that they can say, hey, we want to strike this juror. We want to strike that juror. And that's, to me, that is the most important process for the defense and for the prosecution. The jurors are going to decide your case. So you know who you want on your team from the get-go. You know who you're talking to from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And once you get your jury, you can refine your arguments and you can refine your positions according to who you have as jurors.
So what I did know that there was more women than men as far as jurors. Do you think that, and somebody did ask me that when I was doing the live for Soul Hip Hop. So shout out to them. They were the ones who had me cover this trial. because baby, I would not have done it on my own volition. So shout out to them for the opportunity. But somebody did ask me that in the chat when I was doing the live for them, what was the makeup of the jurors? Now, do you think if the makeup was a little bit different, it would be a different outcome? Or what are your feelings?
I will say, throughout the trial, just like talking with people and even going online, I did find that people were pretty much divided along gender lines, but I don't know that made a difference to the jury. I think, because you might say, oh, there are more women than men. Well, some of these women are mothers. Some of, these women have sons. Some of these women have never been in these situations, that, some people could look at as morally compromising. So it really doesn't matter to me, the gender makeup of the jury.
Okay. So let's take it to day one. This is when I met you. You had a whole different hairstyle back then.
I had a fro, darling.
I know. So that was a whole different hairstyle. But let's take it today when I'm pulling out my notes. But I know your notes are probably way more detailed. This is when they had the opening arguments. So the defense was the one who had the first opening argument. What did you think of their arguments off bat?
The prosecution started first.
The prosecution.
So I thought the prosecution did a really good job with their audio visuals. They took us through they gave us a good timeline, and they had just good audio, good visuals to go along with their position. So I thought it was pretty persuasive. Something that stood out to me was I think it was the 4:27 a.m. text from Kelsey to the bodyguard. That's one. I think there was I think they did the prison call from Tory to Kelsey. I'm not sure. It's in my notes. But then what was also powerful was somebody picked up from the camera the bullets, the pow, 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 pow. That was pretty strong.
So the question about the bullets, was the bullets a simulation, or was that picked up from somebody's house?
No, that was picked up from somebody's house. And I think they stipulated, the defense stipulated to that being picked up from somebody's house. It was, I think they call it like a Nest camera or audio or something like that. So that was definitely the bullets.
And then they also played the 911 calls from 3 neighbors.
Okay. I zoned out for that.
Yeah, they played the 911, which I also found very interesting because those 3 neighbors didn't want to testify, but the one neighbor who did, they didn't play his 911 call, which I found that's where, and we don't find that until later when the defense talks about it, but it's just kind of like that's where the hole started forming for me. And this is where I'm also seeing stuff online as well. It's just like, okay, well, why didn't they? And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but a lot of questions were like, why wasn't this person called? Or why didn't this happen? Why didn't this happen? So there were a lot of questions with that. So
that was Sean Kelly.
So that was Sean Kelly.
Why didn't the defense play his 911 call?
Why didn't the prosecution play the 911 call?
Well, I'll tell you, the prosecution, I listened to the motions during voir dire. At the end of voir dire, they would always do motions to see what can be admitted and what would be excluded. And the prosecution said, we're not calling Sean Kelly because I think the defense, I don't think they had his address or something at the time. Well, they had his address because it was like where the incident was. In front of it. Right. There was some issue, and the prosecution said, we're not calling him. He's all over the place. He's changed his statement like 4 or 5 times. So the prosecution already said they're not putting him on. The defense knew that. So, yeah.
And then what about Kylie? Did they mention Kylie in any of those situations?
Yeah, during the motions, I think the defense mentioned in passing, Kylie Jenner, Corey Gamble, may have to testify, or they were on a witness list. I don't know if they were on the defense or the prosecution witness list, but they were on a witness list. But I don't think that they were ever, there was ever a legitimate possibility that they would be called.
Okay. And why wasn't the 4th person in the car? So we have Megan testified, Kelsey testified, obviously Tory And I'll get back to that question too. Tory didn't testify, but
Mm-hmm.
Quan, who was the driver, why it to me it would make sense. It felt like they brought him in as like a last hand. Why didn't they bring him in to testify? Because he was the fourth person in the car.
I've been saying throughout this whole thing, where's Jaquan? But where's Jaquan? So, but he did come
The last day.
And I think I don't know. I'm assuming the defense. I'm assuming he wouldn't have done what he needed to do for the defense, and the prosecution didn't feel a need to call him. So I think that they thought they had tied it up. They had done their job at that point. But I did hear. I think that was the day I was getting braids. I'm not sure, but I wasn't there during that time.
Yeah. So do you feel like after everything is said and done, do you think that Tory should have testified?
No, absolutely not. I think there was too much. No, absolutely not. First of all, it's too easy to kind of open the door to start talking about a person's character. And it's just too much of a risk. You don't want to open the door to talk about Tory's character or anything that he has done prior to this or while this situation has been going on. So you're aware of the deal with August Alsina. I think that's pretty well known. And I think there was another young man that he had an encounter with, a gentleman named Prince from a reality show. So you don't want to open the door to bring those matters in and to be questioned about that on the stand. You don't want to open the door to be questioned about his 2017 incident that was mentioned. I think that was a gun issue. It's just too, if your story isn't tight, if your story isn't 100% together, it's just too much of a risk. And he has a right to not testify. The burden of proof is on the prosecution.
Right. But if this is your life, right? Like it now we see everything is played out, right? And he's found guilty by the jury. And we're playing hindsight, like what if, knowing that was going to be a possibility, do you think they would have changed their stance and had him take the stand?
No, no, because it's just too much of a risk, especially there's just too much of a risk. I know defense attorneys just don't like to do it. I don't like to do it. Who knows what he's like on the stand? I don't know if they're talking to him, when they're trying to prep him, how he comes across. Does he come across as likable, believable? Does he stutter? Does he recall everything too perfectly, not enough? I mean, he would just be under such a critical eye. Yeah, it may not have been worth it. But jurors always want to know, why didn't he testify? He doesn't have to testify.
And so now let's go to Tory's lawyers, the defense. They open up with their opening arguments. They start off with saying jealousy. That's the first word, which got me. I think that Madesi is a really great storyteller. And maybe I just fell into that trap, and the jurors didn't. It got me. There was a lot of sensationalism. I don't think that's a word, but you know what I'm saying.
I feel what it means.
Yeah. There was just a lot of storytelling. He took us from the beginning, and this is what I noted in the very beginning. He took us not when they were driving the car, but what happened at the party, like establishing a story, the origin story. And again, now speaking to you over the last couple of days, I know that that wasn't, you didn't need to do that, but it kind of created more holes in the story. So do you think their game plan backfired on them?
I think, no, I don't. I think putting Kelly on the stand backfired on them wildly. And I saw what they were trying to do. As my very good friend, my good sister Uji says, I saw the helicopter, but they just never landed, right? So I saw where they were, but they just didn't bring it down. So they were shaping the defense that it was Kelsey, but there's so many, they just didn't bring all the elements for it to be Kelsey, right? And they were trying to use, I guess, the party situation, as that foundation, just establishing like, this is where the anger began. This is where the animosity began. This is where, like, this is what led up to Kelsey allegedly shooting Megan. I saw what they were trying to do. And,
right.
They just didn't land the plane.
And Gary 20 says Tory, I'm assuming, had too much that was documented. I agree. There's a lot of people who are saying essentially, this was my life, I want to go on the stand. But going back to what you're saying, it might have even did more damage than actually what they were trying to accomplish. For Tory's lawyers, the defense, they start off with jealousy. They essentially paint the whole picture that they were at Kylie's house. Megan invites Tory. They also both sides did talk about the fact that Tory and Megan did have relations, not relationship, because there's a very big difference. They did have relations over the pandemic. And I was talking to another lawyer and somebody else about that. They're like, well, they were a sneaky link. And I was like, no, pandemic romances or relations is a whole different beast that we never experienced, meaning that we were locked in the house. If you had a little pandemic boo, that was the pandemic boo. You might not have made that person your pandemic boo or your boo in real life if the pandemic was around. And I am putting out there, I'm willing to bet that if the pandemic didn't happen, those relations between Tory and Megan probably wouldn't have happened. Not to the extent that they did, like that EJ was dropping her off, et cetera, et cetera. So, now that she's looking back and she's saying that she's embarrassed, I can kind of see why she said that. It's like, I don't want to admit to it. Now, with that being said, the defense did really harp on the fact that she did, interviews with the cops, the Gayle King interview, etc., that she did lie. If you were talking to Megan and coaching her through this process, what would you say? If you were like Olivia Pope quarterbacking for her, what would you have told her to do from the inception? Or what would you have suggested that she did?
For me, I don't know. I would, number one, my first thought is Gayle would have never asked that question because, that's the question everybody wants to know. Hey, you're going to get this interview. You will not ask her that question. Like, I will burn this place down. You will not ask her that question, period. Now, if we knew that question was coming, I'd let her know, hey, like, tell the truth. First of all, it's all about just making your client feel comfortable. I think I've said this before. There's been a deep current of misogyny through all of this and sexual shaming throughout all of this, which I find quite odd because, Megan raps about sex, unapologetically. So I find that the shaming, the sexuality and the shaming wild. It's mind boggling. But I would have let her know, hey, this is a safe space, and I tell all my clients, like, your truth is your freedom. Your truth will set you free, and it's okay. Like, what happened was a mistake, forgive yourself, and I would also kind of talk about like my experiences and, the clients I've had and what I've seen in this world. Like, hey, forgive yourself. Like, that happened. Boom, boom, boom. Move past it, admit it, and we'll get over it. We'll get through it. But tell the truth, because people are going to find out. You're going to have to stand trial for this, and you're going to have to tell the truth on the stand. So you want to have a reputation of being truthful. That's the most important part, right? Because everybody kind of like hammered in on, oh, she lied on Gayle King. Like, okay, well, yeah, she did, and she gave a reasonable experience, a reasonable reason, I guess. She said, like, how could somebody that what did she say? Like,
how can somebody I shared my body with shoot me? And now I have to, I definitely see that point, but also rewinding to all of that, something that she did mention was the reason why we all got to this point where now the state of California is going after Tory Lanez is because he was talking about it, and now she had to talk about it. Now, how did we get to the point? Because that's another question. It's not like Megan was suing Tory, which is
Right.
what a lot of people are thinking. Megan went after Tory. It's the state of California that went after Tory. So
Right.
how did we get to the point that the state of California got involved? Was it because of all the social media posts, or the moment that a gun is shot in California, people have to talk about it?
I mean, you move forward with what you have evidence to prosecute, right? So something that did confuse me was I do believe Megan said in her testimony that it was going to all go away. Let me find it in my notes.
Yeah, she said it was going to all go away if Tory's team didn't start saying stuff. She wouldn't have said anything.
But something I don't know what was said, but she made a statement, I think 4 days after the incident. She made a statement.
Mm-hmm.
I did not hear in court that she, identified a shooter. I don't know what she said during that statement, but I do know she made a statement with her team.
Yeah, that was you're right, because I think the initial statement that she made when the day of, she didn't say who it was. Then 4 days later, she did speak to them with Desiree and her team on. And I'm not sure if she said Tory at that time, but later on she did say it was him. So if she didn't say, so within those 4 days, and this is another kind of hole in it. If, as far as I'm hearing, the social media streets, Tory's team hadn't said anything within those 4 days. So then is the statement accurate? So those are kind of the little things that I've been seeing on social media, and I don't know, if we're going to have an accurate timeline as to who said what when. So no matter what, the facts. And then another thing that the prosecution did say is the reason why they didn't swipe Kelsey for DNA is that they already pegged Tory as a suspect. Mm-hmm. So even before the 4 days, Tory was already a suspect, and that means that they were going to prosecute him anyway.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, they could, but they could also decide not to prosecute him if they realized their case fell apart and that there was another person who likely shot her.
Oh, goodness. Well, then so we finish with the opening statements. Then we go to the cops. The first cop, Officer Diaz, he wasn't very good as far as a witness. He made things really a little bit shaky while listening to him. And then the little elements that the defense did talk about, as far as placement cards, as far as blood splatter, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Again, do you think, kind of going into day one of the case, and if you're going to go a point system, do you think the defense was kind of leading that day because they were poking a lot of holes at the cops not doing their job or not doing things that are supposed to be happening?
No, I don't think, I think it was 0-0, because so from my notes, it looks like the defense was trying to poke the holes with respect to the initial investigation, but they were also trying to set up that there was a fight. They were saying there was Kelsey's necklace was in the street and there was a nail in the street. So mm-hmm. It was kind of I didn't really feel like either side won. We were just kind of establishing some facts, and we were mm-hmm. also establishing the fact that the defense didn't really have an opportunity to build the best defense because the police work wasn't the best for them, right? There were supposed to be placards that were laid out that identifies okay, we found this evidence here, placard 1, mm-hmm. we found evidence here, placard 2. So there could be some type of, we could reset the scene and kind of see what happened. They didn't have that opportunity. So I think, but still 0-0. What's that intent?
See, for me, I had defense up at 1, just because what they told in the opening arguments was okay, now you're kind of filling in how we got to this point. And we'll get to Kelsey's testimony as well, because if you're going by where everybody was sitting, it's well, how did how did this all happen and by who and all this other stuff. And then when you had the officers, we had Officer Diaz. He wasn't, very convincing. He just seemed like, I don't know. There's this term called hip hop police where, it's people in the industry, things kind of either magically disappear or magically appear depending on who you are in the industry. So I don't know if they thought this was going to be one of those scenarios where it's going to magically disappear. Therefore, they're not going to, follow everything down to the T. I don't know what that was. And then they had another officer. Who was it? The third officer, Sandra Cabral. She was pretty good. And then they had another officer.
That's Cabral.
After that.
Okay, that was
the woman was good.
Yeah, that's officer number 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Officer Lynn, I think he was after, and he was okay. She was the best out of the 3 of them.
So wait, Cabral said, sorry, go ahead.
What were you gonna say?
Cabral is the one who said all of the passengers were swabbed for GSR. And
right.
Remember, only two had GSR, and that was Kelsey and
correct.
Tory. Right.
And then that's my question there. All of them were swiped for GSR. Why didn't all of them, or at least 3 of them, be swiped for DNA? Like, what harm would it have done to swipe 2 other people for DNA?
I agree.
So that's where the whole comes, because hypothetically, and this is a hypothetical, so please don't quote me on this, but if the storyline, if you were to combine both, Megan's, Kelsey's, and the defense's storyline, and Sean Kelly's storyline, and Kelsey really did pull the gun, but Tory, they were fighting over the gun or something like that, then there might be a possibility, if you found her DNA or not found her DNA, at least you tested for it. But that was a real kind of like, at least that would have been able to cancel her out.
I'm trying to figure out, something happened when they went to the police station. So Megan said she had stepped on glass. She didn't give up anything when she went to the when she was handcuffed, when she was in the ambulance, and when she was in the hospital. Didn't give up anything. So it's between Jaquan, Kelsey, and Tory. And I'm thinking, like, none of them said anything. Kelsey said, like, she's, does what she sees on TV. She has to speak to a lawyer. I'm assuming Tory did the same thing. I'm assuming Jaquan did the same thing. So the police did a process of elimination. And the one piece of evidence we do know is that the gun was found in the driver's seat. And that's Tory was found. And Tory had GSR on his hands. So I think they just did a simple process of elimination and arrested Tory.
But that's how mistakes are made. Like, I mean, they're all there anyway. Like, there's millions of dollars that's spent on police equipment and tanks and all this stuff that the police don't need. We don't need a tank, but I'm willing to bet to, pay to get a DNA swab. It wouldn't have taken more than 5 additional minutes to swipe 2 other people that were already there. It's not like you had to go and find them. So, I mean, just more of a process of elimination than anything else. But I guess it's just like, hey, this is, I guess so. I mean, hindsight's 2020. I'm not a cop. I just watch SVU. So, I really don't know nothing about nothing. So here we go. So where that pretty much ends day 1 of the trial. So then we go into day 2. And day 2 was that Megan's day?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, when did they swab the DNA? Like, did they do it that night?
Both of them.
Because I know you have to get a warrant to get somebody's DNA unless they give it to you voluntarily. But they could have asked her. Well, I don't know what happened.
That is. So do you think? Then if that's the case, then why did Tory give them his DNA?
Well, they probably got a warrant for it. Like, they probably, I guess, like, showed that they had probable cause to
But can you get a warrant while you're in jail? What if he denies it? Then they say you can't get bail? Like,
you can deny it, but I mean, you just like produce all of the evidence that you have, and you say like, this is why we need their DNA, and a judge will sign off on it if the judge agrees.
and this is why people are. So I don't know if you were able to see this, and I did contact the person who made this. So they have an appeal for Tory Lanez, the verdict. Now there have been a lot of people who signed it. My question is, will this make a difference? Say if 1 million people sign this petition, will it make a difference in what happens to Tory?
No, I've never heard of that, but that there are a lot of things I haven't heard of, but no. So I was surprised that that he was taken into custody. Maybe that's something unique about California law, but he was taken into custody, remanded right away. And, I'm surprised that his attorneys didn't ask for a bond while they appeal the case, so he can be released on bond.
Yeah, is that a California? I found that too. So let me be honest with y'all.
Mm-hmm.
That was very traumatic for me. Clearly, this is my first. This is my first time covering a trial, and I know we're jumping all over the place. So now we're jumping to the very end where they find him guilty on all 3 counts, and they do a poll with each juror. Each juror says yes, and then I couldn't even hear what the judge said because the audience was kind of going a little crazy. And next thing I know, they're turning him around and they're putting handcuffs on him. And they open this door and it looks like a tunnel. I don't know what it was very dramatic. And I was tearing up because, and I've said this on plenty of occasions, not on the fact that whether he was guilty or not, but just seeing in particularly a Black man in handcuffs, especially everything that we've been through over the last couple of years. For me, it was my first time seeing that, witness that in person, witness the fact that, again, not judging whether he's guilty or not. It's more of somebody's life being taken from them. You're literally witnessing that. And so it was very traumatic. Then you have a woman crying in the 3rd row. It was a lot. And then after the jurors left, his father stood up and essentially cussed off the DA. I think he also cussed off the judge. The sheriff had to escort him out. It was very traumatic because if you put yourself in that position, 1, if you're in the position of losing your life because you're being taken to jail, or 2, you're witnessing a family member, that happening to a family member, that is very traumatic. And then you extend it just to the community. And then vice versa. This is also what I said. We weren't there to witness Megan getting shot. But if you got shot or the friend of yours got shot, you would feel the same way. Like it's not like a scratch or something like that. And I understand wholeheartedly why she didn't tell the police it was Tory, because I've been in a situation where I was in a position where I could report somebody on a situation that happened, a situation that happened to me. And I didn't, because it was like, I don't want to put that person I didn't want to put that person in that position, even though the attack happened to me. So it's just kind of like, I can kind of see where she was coming from with that, with the whole thing. But it was a whole scenario. And yeah, I don't know if I would have felt the same way with Harvey Weinstein, but it was very traumatic. But anyways, we'll go back.
I felt so bad because like, can I share like what happened when I came across you?
Yeah.
Like you were in tears, and I was like, okay. And then I was like,
well, that's a Leo trait.
Yeah, I was like, I need you. It is a Leo thing, because I was like, well, go ahead and heal your tears. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll circle back. Yeah. I don't know what to do right now. So just to clarify, both Alfie and I are Leos, and this is exactly what I do to people who this is what I actually used to do when I saw people crying. I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. So I'll circle back. I'll circle back. So that's why I felt no ways, because like I totally get it. It's like, what are you supposed to do? And it was one of those things where I forgot what the word is. Like I think it's called empath. Anyways, there's a trait where it's a yes. Empath?
Yeah, yeah.
where like now in my adult years, I can like I feel certain things more than I did when I was younger. And so it was just more of seeing his son crying, all these elements and the
Yeah.
chaos. I was just like, and now you envision like, you know, your family or all this other stuff. But anywho, we'll go
It was
back to day
it was
two.
true chaos. Like
It was.
I was two things. When I saw you crying and I had not a tear, I was like, I've seen way too many Black men incarcerated and being handcuffed and taken to the back and in orange jumpsuits, you know, and it made me sad for that realization. But like you had to be there. Sorry, you just had to be there after they said guilty to the first one, and I didn't think he would be found guilty on all counts, but I knew there would be
At least one.
at least one. But there was like a hush, and then I think it just hit for his dad and his stepmom, and it was the most frightening space to be in. And even the girl next to me, she was so sweet. I was literally like my legs and my hand, I was like holding on to her because I was very much so afraid. It was it was really very, very sad to me because it was two young people. You know, this just didn't have to happen.
Right.
And Kelsey's
And then even
statement.
his lawyers, once they did the first one put his hands in his, and he literally, and it's like he knew if that first one went, the rest of them was, it was a wrap. And it was just like, when I saw him do that, I was like, oh shit, this is not going to be, this is not. And then I don't know. I don't know if I should say kudos to Tory, or he, out of everybody, he was, and I couldn't see his face, but his body language, I don't know if he zoned out. I don't know what happened, but he like just, I don't know, emotionless. I don't know what the word was, but he kept it together. I was able to sneak out because, like I said, there was chaos in the courtroom. But even when there was a couple girls saying like, "We love you, Tory," all this stuff, like he was smiling at them while he was being handcuffed. Like, anyways, let's go all the way back to day two. Megan hits the stand. It was a big thing. It was hard to get a seat. It felt like a concert. Like it was a whole scenario. So she looked fabulous. I'll give her that. Purple outfit, bob, all this other stuff. She hits the stand, and with this question, if Megan didn't want to testify, would the case not have even happened?
No, I think it still would have happened. I've got neighbors who are yelling. Can you hear them or just me?
Oh yeah. Well, maybe you just need it on so we can hear it, so we all know what happens, because we need the cameras on these days.
Okay. So anyway, so you always need a victim, right? So you would have to prove that there was a victim and that she was injured by the gun. So I think that they could have done a pretty good job of proving that she did not want to get shot in the feet.
Right.
So yeah, I think it definitely would have moved forward, but I don't think it would have been hard for them to get a conviction. So that's kind of like in our domestic violence cases. A lot of times you don't go to trial with them because a lot of times the victim won't show up or she won't participate for various reasons. So it's always a little harder to prosecute those. But in this case, yeah, they would have moved forward with it, and it just would have been a challenge for the prosecution, I think.
Okay. So we have her hit the stand. The prosecution starts asking her questions. They take us through everything that happened. They also talk about her relationship with Kelsey. That I do have here. 4 days later, Megan does decide to talk to the detective and says Tory shoots her. So this is day two. So that's when according to my notes, my notes are kind of shaky, but that's when that happened. So what up, Menace? God, blast from the past. So with that being said, what do you think of Megan's testimony for day 2?
I thought Megan's testimony, I wrote on my notes that she had a very solid testimony. She was just forthright. She was emotional. Her explanations for not telling the truth were reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that I talked to were like, oh, okay, I can believe that. Oh, okay, that makes sense that she said that. So I thought she was just very solid. I don't think the prosecution shook her up at all. And I also, I don't think not the prosecution, I don't think the defense shook her up at all. Yeah.
She did a really good job. For those of you guys who are joining us, so we're breaking down the Tory Lanez case that just recently happened. Both Alfie and I were in the courtroom the entire time. And the reason that I decided to put this together is just because there's just been a lot of misinformation, which granted, you're not, it's hard to put 8 hours or 7 hours worth of court into an article or a 3-minute video. So, we're trying to break it all down for you day by day with a couple jumps here and there. But then, so we're currently on day 2, which is when Megan took the stand. I think she did a really good job considering, when you're having people attack you, it's always, you can see that the moment she talked about, I did hear people say they felt she was quite dramatic for that part, the moment where she was talking about if she knew that she was going to go through all this, especially after the fact too, because now people are attacking her because Tory went to jail and he was found guilty, not by her, but by the jury. So Megan did say if she knew she was going to go through all this, she wished that, he would have just shot her dead, which is, people were saying, cry me a river and all this other stuff. But imagine you have, 1 or 2 people coming after you or attacking you. You can block them on your social media quite easily if you have, 1,000 friends or 100 friends, whatever. But when you have millions of people following you, and now you have a million people attacking you and attacking your character, it does a lot on the psyche. And I don't care what anybody says about that. Just flip the script on yourself. You can say you're the strongest person whatsoever, but having thousands of people attack you on a daily basis, and what you're about, but they're spreading all this, and now they're also possibly impacting your career and your livelihood, then that's a different story.
And there's like I had no idea that this was going on, but there's like a lot of just deep, visceral hate toward her. I mean, deep. Yeah. So if you keep up with the comments and the blogs, then that's gonna tear you down eventually. But yeah, let me say, when I say she was solid, I have here that Megan and McDessian, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I said they went back and forth, and McDessian, she said very clearly, because I got shot. And then he said that this has actually helped your career. And she was like, the fact that he shot me helped my career. And then she ended with, oh, I don't know why he shot me. And then she pointed and said, but he shot me. I thought that was very, very solid for her.
Right.
They didn't do anything to penetrate that identification. And I think they could have, because as we later realized with other testimony, they had been drinking a lot. But they did not try to, I guess, diminish her recall by saying, hey, you had been intoxicated. You had been drinking all night. You've been drinking for 9 hours that day, none of that.
Yeah. So, would have been better if they brought EJ first and then brought Megan.
Well, that was the prosecution brought Megan. So
okay.
We had to wait on EJ because I think the defense brought EJ, right?
The defense did bring EJ. So I did find that as well. And now kind of thinking back into why the jury decided to go that direction. You have the witness saying not hesitantly, but saying with conviction that Tory shot her on multiple times throughout the day. And you know, they did in the times, because like I said, they were the court that day was just chaotic, and they were letting certain people in, and they were like, it was a weird scenario. So the times I did get to see her in court, she sounded solid. She sounded like she knew what she was talking about, and she said everything with conviction. Even with I guess we can jump to Kelsey. Even with Kelsey's testimony the next day, which took a day and a half, I think, to do hers. Wasn't as solid. Was kind of all over the place. But we listened to her her interview back in September. Now, do you think if we weren't able to listen to that interview, the conviction might have been a little bit different? Or do you think with Megan's testimony, the cops and the neighbors, plus the text message, that's all they really needed?
You know, I'm not sure, because, you know, the whole dramatic situation of Kelsey coming in and wanting to plead the fifth and then being granted immunity. When she actually did testify, it was like pulling teeth, and it was so frustrating. Had that been, you know, if that were it, then, you know, maybe we would be looking at an acquittal or a hung jury, right? But also, the prosecution would not have put her on if they didn't have her prior statement. And it's because she admitted that she was not telling the truth, or she was being dishonest in that September 14th, 2022 statement, that we were able to hear the entire statement under a hearsay exception, I think, of prior inconsistent statements, and also prior consistent statements. So when we heard Kelsey's testimony, for me, that sealed everything. So, and then, you know, the testimony from, I think, the firearms expert was also very moving. I think that it took like 8.5 pounds of pressure to pull that trigger. It could not have been an accident, and he emptied the magazine, or whoever the shooter was.
So that's why when the jury asked for the willful versus, what was the thing that they asked for?
Purposeful versus willful, I think.
And then kind of looking at what the gun expert said, that's why they decided on willful.
Yeah, I think they asked for his testimony as well, because I looked at some of the questions that the jury asked for, and it was Sean Kelly's testimony, the difference in those definitions, and the gun expert's testimony as well. So, because I think a lot of theories were with respect to Kelsey's guilt would be that Kelsey had the gun and she shot those first 3 shots, and then Tory wrestled the gun from her and then shot the gun in the air.
Right.
Which still doesn't make sense, because then you'd have to make sense of the DNA situation. There are tons of theories out there, but for me, again, just going back to Kelsey's September 14th, 2022 statement sealed everything for me. It was just
So let's go back to that. So that was, I mean, if you're a fan of Law and Order, it was the beginning of it. The middle of the day was very, like, I don't know. I thought we were being punked. But the beginning of the day, Kelsey comes in with her lawyer, and all you hear is kind of like we were getting settled, and the jury comes in, and we hear she's pleading the fifth, and that the prosecution offered her a deal. And then the defense gets up, and they did a lot of sidebarring. I don't know if this is normal for most court cases, but they did a lot of sidebarring. And so what we later found out, and this is something that I was talking about that I've been seeing online as well, that Kelsey was offered immunity. But there's 2 different types of immunity. So you have use immunity and transactional immunity, which is another reason that I thought that Tory was going to get off, because if they really believed that he did it, then why not give her transactional immunity? So for everybody who is watching, can you explain the difference between use immunity and transactional immunity, and, you know, the reasoning for giving one but not the other?
So, oh my God, jogging my memory, I believe use immunity means that anything that you admit to are discussed while you're testifying means that the prosecution cannot use that or any information that they derive from that against you in a later prosecution. Transactional immunity means that they can't prosecute you for any reason, for anything arising out of that particular transaction, meaning the incident, if I'm jogging my memory correctly.
Yeah,
So,
because they said as long as she doesn't perjure herself, for use of
right,
immunity as well. But
right.
here's the thing with her testimony. So we have Kelsey. So they apparently this. So what happened was Kelsey, her lawyer, and the judge. They were in the judge's chambers, and Kelsey told the judge that she wanted to plead the fifth and gave the reasons why. And then the prosecution apparently came in and offered her use immunity, but not transactional immunity. So now we have Kelsey on the stand, but Kelsey's not I think one of the lawyers referred to it as courtroom amnesia. She didn't remember, half the stuff that happened. Apparently anything that had to do with Tory, she didn't remember, which do you think that in itself also made him look guilty? Because it's like, how do you remember certain things, but anything pertaining to Tory, you don't remember?
It made her look, to me, now this is just my perspective, is it didn't make him look guilty, but it made her appear frightened. And I think what I got from her whole testimony and even the statement is that throughout this entire situation, she felt unprotected. And, that's been just my theme for her is
Right.
she hasn't been protected in this. And I think, Megan had a camp, Tory had a camp. They each had resources. Kelsey was only ever attached to Megan. So if she's not in connection with Megan anymore, and she's not in connection with Tory, she's out here by her lonesome trying to protect herself. And nobody's saying she didn't do it. Right. So I think she's always felt unprotected. But whether I don't think that made Tory look more guilty or less guilty.
Okay. Well, we also have something that she did mention is that, she had a family member who was, I think just passed away, and she also just had a baby. So she was stressed out. She said she didn't want to be there on multiple occasions. So, that people were referring to her as a hostile witness. So there's that's kind of being thrown around. Now, a lot of, and this is called also the social media chatter with everything that's happened now. Again, Tory's now in custody. Do you think anything that she said on the stand is going to come back to, like, do you think the prosecution's now going to go after her?
No, they've got their person. They prosecuted their person for the shooting, and that would be Tory Lanez, Daystar Patterson. So what would they go after her for?
Girl, I don't know. This is
because I'm thinking, like, people have said, oh, they're gonna now prosecute her for perjury. She didn't perjure herself on the stand. Like, according to her, she was dishonest in her September 14th interview. So they're not going to go after her for perjuring herself on the stand. They could go after her maybe for misleading officers or, obstructing an investigation if they want to. But I seriously doubt that's going to happen. Seriously doubt.
All right. So with that being said, much of the day of day 2, Kelsey just couldn't remember anything. And again, I get the point of protecting yourself, especially when you have 2 major camps. I'm guaranteeing you, Tory's lawyers weren't cheap. They had a whole investigative guy that was there almost every day. And, she's just trying to, take care of herself, make sure everything's good. So most of the day is she can't remember everything, even with the defense, which I thought things would have changed when they did the cross. She still couldn't remember. And so the prosecution was already frustrated. Then the defense came, and I think they thought maybe they would get some answers, and they couldn't get answers either. And they were all up in arms. And after Kelsey's testimony, she came back the next day, and it was another, half day of her not remembering. After Kelsey's testimony, they agreed to play her full interview. Now, could the defense have said, no, we don't want that played, or because it was already done, it was pretty much, because if they could have stopped it from being played, I'm thinking, like you said before, the outcome of this case would be a little bit different.
Well, so that's the that's what like the sidebars are about, and that's what like the after the trial, that's what the motions are. You know, after, I think you realize, like after the jurors were dismissed for the day, sometimes we'd sit there and we'd have a lot of like post-trial motions, right? So the the prosecution was frustrated because the defense tried to paint the picture, which is what they're supposed to do, that Kelsey was under stress and didn't feel comfortable when she made that September 14th statement, right? And I think we all saw, what is her name? Investigator.
Detective Little?
Little, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like Michelle A. Sweet as can be, sweet as pie. But the defense tried to shape it like she was under duress and she felt pressured to make this statement, and that the prosecution was doing something that wasn't, I guess, above board, and called into question and attempted to, I guess, impugn the prosecution's integrity. So they wanted, I guess, I would have said, like, at least the introduction of the audio for that purposes. They wanted that played. But also Kelsey said that she lied, and she lied when she made the statements from September 14th. So the prosecution got that statement in under the exception, the hearsay exception of prior inconsistent statements. So, you know, the prosecutors have to be able to rely on something when they're making an investigation. And that's sworn statements that you make in front of the prosecutors. You know, and Kelsey had her lawyers present, and she had her partner present. And she admitted that, you know, she felt comfortable. She knew she wasn't under any obligation to make that statement. So that was important. So anyway, they got that statement in under prior inconsistent statement. And I'm sure the defense argued hard against admitting that. But the judge said, hey, I'm going to let it in. And I think he should have. And to me, that was a game changer. Because again, after she put that statement, after we heard that statement, people were in tears. People were fighting back tears. The young lady that sat next to me said, these are two Black women who were unprotected. You know, the jurors, they had the full transcript of her statement. And, you know, so they're hearing it and they're reading it. That was powerful because I think she broke down crying twice. You know, so, I mean, it was very powerful. And she seemed just unencumbered when she was just making the statement. So I think that was a game changer.
Now, we have that statement. We combine both statements of what she said in court and then her statement. And then we have Sean Kelly saying that there was a fight that both Megan and Kelsey said didn't happen. Are we now dismissing Sean Kelly's statement of that? Or what do we make of that?
Sean Kelly's statement should be studied in classrooms, and how to handle a witness like Sean Kelly.
More.
Let me get to my notes on Sean Kelly. Yeah, he said there was a fight. He said,
wait, before you continue. So Sean Kelly so there were 4 911 calls. Sean Kelly's was a 911 call, and he was the only person, one of the neighbors. Actually, the shooting happened right in front of his house, that was willing to come into court and testify. So this is who Sean Kelly is. Let me just paint the picture for your visual. I saw him outside. And, you know, if you guys are not familiar with LA, think of like kind of, I don't know what he does for a living, but very like, you know, kind of old white guy, but kind of a hipster. But then I don't know about you, but he threw me off with the English accent. I was like, oh, okay. So that kind of was like, all right, this is different. This is another element to the what's happening. And I think quickly he realized that maybe he wanted to do the statement, but then quickly he realized that he wished he never would have said yes, because it was very grueling on both sides. And he would have been like, well, I just wanted to protect my son. I could have just said no, and life would have been so much easier. So now, sorry, go on with Sean Kelly's statement.
I'm trying to find out where whoever called him, he gave them the answer that they wanted. He said, he did say, I will say here. Hold on. I have my
One
notes.
thing he did say is he never saw a gun. That he's very about everything else was kind of very fluid, but the one consistent thing he said is that he never saw the gun. He just saw flashes.
He said, you've got to let me find my notes here because it was insane. He said they were all fighting. They were all fighting. He said that that was his default. Oh, here are my notes. I said his default is they were all fighting. I never saw a gun. They were all fighting. He said when he saw the first muzzle flash, it was by the female. Tory was still in the car. Then he said they were all shouting. Tory was shouting the loudest. He believes the girl fired the first shot. Then he says, hold on. Oh yeah. He goes, the prosecutor played the audio of the gunshots, right? This is after, so there was a direct, and then this is the cross. So the prosecutor played the audio of the gunshots. 3 shots, I have them in my notes. There were 3 shots fired, about a 1 second pause, then 2 more shots. And he said, yeah, that sounded like what I heard and saw. He says, Tory's arms were outstretched. After the short guy shot the girl, she collapsed in the road and started bleeding and crawling. Then he said, it appears that there was a girl shooting inside of the car. Then he said he saw Meg's legs kicking all the time. Then he said the short guy was hurling a torrent of abuse, all N-words, mother effer. They were all calling each other that. He was going crazy. He was really agitated. And then he said that at some point he said all 3 of them jumped on what would be Megan, and he thought that they were going to kill her. He thought that they were going to throw her into the river behind the house. And then they picked her all up by her arms and feet, and they threw her into the car. And he thought that they were going to all murder her. And I was like, okay. It's just, to me, it just, even the audience was, you heard like a guffaw in the audience, like, what? I think it just turned into a power episode for him. He said, the larger gentleman said, the police are coming. It appeared to him that they were trying to kill her. He called 911 and said they are beating girls. All 3 of them were beating the girl.
That part was kind of traumatic. But again, so what happened was, it happened in front of Sean Kelly's house. The back part of the house, I think it is, or it's kind of weird because it's on the hills. His bedroom windows are facing the street. And so the car pulls up and he's looking down at what's happening. So he's able to see that. However, it's 2:00 in the morning. And if you're not familiar with like the Hollywood Hills, there's not like lighting there. However, one of the questions I did have was, even with a little bit of money, you figured that you'd have cameras. So where were the cameras?
That's a good question. I am not sure, but I'm looking at his testimony, and for me, it was, I found it troubling that people were very much so cherry picking, from his testimony. And I think I even told you, like, you can't say you want to use this part because it fits, like, how you feel the events went down, but you want to just say, like, we'll negate everything else that he said. It's like,
right.
He's either truthful or he's not. He either has a good memory or he doesn't. There's no cherry picking, and this testimony was all over the place.
Yeah, I think with his testimony, the fact that he was the only person to want to come to the stand, you figured that if you're gonna take because nobody, I look, I can only speak for the Black community, and like, not even I'm not even want to speak for the Black community. The folks I know, nobody wants to talk to the cops, much less go into a formal setting and testify to a scenario. No, but like Megan said she didn't want to, Kelsey said she didn't want to, EJ said nobody wants to be in that scenario. So for me, if you are with conviction to take a day off, I mean, I don't know what he does for a living, but take a day off from your life to come into court to testify, I feel like you, without a shadow of a doubt, remember everything. So the defense in their opening statements referred to the neighbor, Sean Kelly, saying that he saw the gun in a woman's hands.
He didn't say he saw her hands. He said,
well, no, that's no, yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but the defense said that in their opening statement.
Okay, yeah.
Then we have Sean Kelly coming and saying, I didn't see a gun. They were all together. And another thing that he did say was that he had, I believe the son was either 6 or 8 years old, and his son was, because of the fighting, his son woke up, and now he's trying to comfort his son. Most likely, I'm assuming, I don't have any kids, but I'm assuming you're going back and forth in between your son who's on the bed and the window. So you're not quite seeing everything that's happening. So his testimony was very dramatic. And I thought because they were bringing him and because he was willing to talk, that it would have been a lot stronger. But do you think because his testimony was all over the place, that was another kind of win for the prosecution, meaning that after Sean Kelly, it was like, it doesn't really matter who else he brings. Like it's a wrap.
Yeah, I think, I don't necessarily think it was a win for the prosecution, but it was definitely a fail for the defense, if that makes any sense. I have here in my notes, poor Mr. Kelly, I wrote observation. This is very early on. I said, the witness has had it. He is stressed. And I think he had turned beet red. And you definitely saw the shift in him where he was like, oh, this is very much so real. Like he saw just like the impact that his testimony was going to have. And I don't think he realized it before. But I have here on my notes after lunch. He said, when the object was in his hands, talking about Tory, and he was hurling a torrent of obscenities, that's a quote, at the victim, the short guy shot her. He was very agitated. The prosecutor asked, was the tone aggressive? He said, oh, absolutely. How is that helpful? You know, but to me, like I wasn't able to accept anything in his testimony, because first he said it was definitely Kelsey.
Right.
He said they were fighting in the vehicle. He said the gun went off at first in the vehicle, and then it also went off outside of the vehicle. It was just all over the place. And then, you know, combined with the three of them now beating up Megan, and then somehow he supposedly saw Tory shooting Megan, and then saw her walk off, and then they continued to beat her, and it just didn't travel well for me.
Right.
So I just threw it all out.
Yeah, he was quite an interesting one, and I'm willing to bet, which is unfortunate, I'm willing to bet that if he ever makes a 911 call again, he's gonna be like that one lady where they played her 911 call I think it was in the intro, where she's like, I don't want my name, I don't want my number, this is what's happening, just figure it out. I think
not come to my house.
Yeah, I feel like if he ever makes a 911 call again, he will, which is unfortunate, but you know, again, I mean, yeah, his testimony kind of read like a movie in certain parts, like the fact that they were apparently all beating up on Megan, which I don't think was the case. The river thing, I mean, I don't know where there's a river traveling up a hill in the Hollywood Hills, a canal maybe, but I don't know if that's even possible. I might try to drive out there one day because I'm sure there's some nice houses there. But yeah, it's very confusing. Thanks, Cliff. Appreciate it. Yeah, we are talking, for those who are joining us, we're talking about the Tory Lanez case, aka Daystar's Patterson the state versus the people versus Daystar Peterson. What actually happened, me and Alfie and I were both in the court for the 2 weeks. It was quite interesting. We just finished talking about Sean Kelly, who was apparently the eyewitness, the neighbor where the shooting happened in front of his house. However, his statement was a wash, and I think the defense didn't get what they were expecting to get out of it. So
you know what? Can we also talk about how they showed us a picture of what the house looked like, right? Who knows when they took that picture? There was a whole vehicle there, right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know whether that vehicle was there that night, whether there was anything obstructing his views.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't know what the lighting is like at night. You know, I guess, you know, his testimony was never
established.
Well, I guess like his perception, like it just was never attacked, right? Like the prosecution was like, okay, well, this is what she saw. But I think like their point was like, let's talk about like Tory. Did you see the short one shooting the gun? And he was like, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because the thing is, I mean, if the defense, and you're right, if the defense kind of dug a little deeper, or the prosecution, meaning again, like where I live, my house, it lights up when there's movement. And, you know, I'm not balling like that. So I'm assuming it'd be the same, especially when you're driving a car and it's late at night, there's groceries, whatever. So what the lighting situation's like, I agree with you. They had like a green, you know, car, but they also had 2 garages. So I don't know if the garage belonged to another house or that was his house. And then also, like, yeah, there was the whole camera situation, you know, I feel like if you're living in those areas, you're going to want to have a camera, at least on the outside of the house. And if they had a camera, which he might do if he didn't have now, if he didn't have then, if you had a camera, then literally there'd be that's it. Like there would be there wouldn't be a trial if you had the footage of whoever doing the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that would have made everybody's life easier, or harder, depending. But so we have Sean Kelly, we do Kelsey. Who else did we have that came? I think we just go to EJ. EJ's testimony.
We talked about the
the gun people.
The gun
and
guy.
Yeah. You want to touch a little bit about them?
I think was he after Megan's testimony?
I think we had them before Kelsey, and then Kelsey came in that afternoon on the 3rd day.
Yeah. Here we go. EJ King, Eric Culberson.
So you can tell, guys, I have 2 books worth of notes.
Yeah. I had highlighted them. I let's see.
So I have part 2 of Kelsey.
I think at one point I have, my God, who shot Megan? It was just back and forth. It was just frustrating. Let's see. Oh, God.
Calls. I literally wrote, I can't remember. I don't know if you guys can see that because of the light. I can't remember on them. Like, that's it.
For Kelsey?
Oh, so Cliff is, for Kelsey. Cliff is asking, do you ladies think he is guilty of shooting her? So here's the thing. In my interpretation, taking everything in, given everything that happened, and given the status of who they are, I think he did, but I don't think he did it with intent. That's my interpretation, meaning that they all had a long day of drinking. Megan and Kelsey more than Tory, because Tory came later on that day to Kylie's house. I think that so just to establish what happened, according to all the testimonies, which we'll get into, at one point, Megan, Kelsey, and Tory, Kelsey and Megan met Tory at the Rock Nation brunch earlier that year. Then Megan told Kelsey she was trying to get Kelsey and Tory together. Kelsey and Tory end up hooking up. Kelsey gets COVID. She goes back to Texas for 2 months. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You know, you don't have too many people around you. Tory is doing whatever Tory does. Megan and Tory start sleeping together. Kelsey gets back from Texas. They get invited to Kylie's house. Megan hasn't told Kelsey that she slept with Tory. According to Kelsey, Megan tells Kelsey to back off from Tory because they might work together, without telling Kelsey, by the way, I also did sleep with him. They get to Kylie's house. Megan invites Tory to Kylie's house. They're there. Tory's trying to get at Kylie. Megan doesn't like that because, again, we're still in the pandemic. I kind of think that even though it's not necessarily her dude, she doesn't want to witness community dick. If you know what community dick is, that means you're sharing it all over the place. You know, she's probably not about that life, even though that's not her man. Then they get into the car, Kelsey, Tory. There's other stuff that kind of happened. I'm kind of breezing through it, but I'll get back to those parts. Tory ends up letting it slip or saying that Megan and him had slept together, and that's kind of how the arguments happen. So I think Megan and Kelsey were having arguments. Then Tory's getting pissed off. Mind you, they're all kind of drunk. I think that she started talking about his career, and he too is also a Leo. There's certain things Leos don't like. Well, there's certain things Leos don't necessarily like about, one doesn't talk about, what's that Erykah Badu song? They're sensitive about their shit.
I'm an artist.
And then you have some alcohol in you. I think he wanted to establish dominance, and I don't think the intent was to shoot her. I think it was an accident. I think it was more to scare her. Because in your non-sober mind, why would you shoot at the feet? I don't know. It just, there's still a lot of holes that we'll never find out. But going into this, not knowing much, not following the whole case, and just kind of starting off from, day one, I did think he did it when I saw him. As days went by, I was like, well, maybe he was pointing it at the ground and it ricocheted into her feet. That's also a theory as well. But then the placement of the seating kind of all gets confusing. And then how does he get back from the back seat to the front seat? And, if we're establishing placing and the gun, then it's more likely that Kelsey has the gun. But then would she just shoot Megan over, Dick? I don't see that happening. But then again, would you shoot somebody over insulting your career? That's where the whole started coming for me. But obviously she got shot. Or even if the gun wasn't shot at her, there was bullets in her foot. And there are people that are saying that there was no bullets there, but we witnessed x-rays with bullet fragments in her foot. So that did happen. It wasn't glass. So as far as that's kind of my working theory. However, again, I wasn't there. I don't know. However, 12 people did find him guilty of it happening. Both ladies have to be okay with Cliff saying both ladies have to be okay with community D. If they're sleeping with the baby and Ben Simmons, they know so. Do you want to take this, Alfie, or you want me to take it?
So much to say about that. I just wanted, the first thing I'll say is, do you think he did it? I think for me, it's not, whether I think he did it or not. I'm looking at the evidence. And the first thing is that 427 text at 4:27 a.m. text, help, Tory shot Meg, 911. Like, explain that to me. I think, they tried to make Kelsey out to be a criminal mastermind. I don't know. Does it seem reasonable? Does it seem reasonable that somebody shoots her best friend over community D, as you say, and then immediately starts to frame another person? Does that make sense to you? That's the first question.
I don't think she has it. I mean, she doesn't appear to look like she has that in her. Like, I feel like,
But she would have had to everything she did after the shooting would have been all about framing Tory. And why would she frame Tory? She'd literally have to be a criminal mastermind, and that's what the defense was shaping. For example, I love actually the way the defense pointed out that Kelsey was the last person that was ordered out of the car. I think it was like Megan first, then maybe the driver, then maybe Tory, and then
no, it was the driver first, then Tory, then Megan, then Kelsey. Go ahead. With that theory, she was sitting, or Tory was sitting in the front seat. Megan was sitting, was it behind the driver? And Kelsey was sitting behind Tory. And with that theory, what the defense said, and that's why I said there's 3 or 4 different theories. Hypothetically,
Kelsey was sitting driver side, backseat driver side, and Megan was
sitting behind Tory. And so, with that being the case, if Kelsey still had the gun, hypothetically, she could have put it in the front seat of where Tory was. But then again,
so she's constantly framing Tory,
right? But then again, the question that I have is, according to Kelsey, Tory got from the back seat behind the driver's side to the passenger side to shoot Megan. And how are you able? Like, I mean, he's small, but again, I mean, when you have adrenaline and you have liquor going, you could do a mass of things, a whole bunch of different things. But it was just like seeing, that's why it was just kind of like how the defense took it as far as Kelsey did it. That was also plausible, because it's like, can you envision Tory jumping from the back seat to the front seat, finding the gun in the console, and then also doing that? Like, that's why I think that's why for myself, I thought there was just way too many possibilities for Tory to be convicted. Another question that we have from Cliff, I thought his DNA wasn't on the gun. So you want to clear, because this was a big thing too that I've been seeing online. Do you want to kind of clear that part up as far as the DNA? Because they were very extensive. We had 2 DNA experts, I believe, both one for the prosecution and one for the defense. They were very extensive on what they were saying as far as DNA. So you want to kind of talk about that, and then I'll piggyback off of that.
Yeah, no. So what I understand is the DNA was inconclusive for Tory. I think there were 4 contributors. One person who was the largest contributor had 90% of the. And look, I talked to the DNA expert after he testified, and he made my eyes glass over. But there was a 90%.
The one for the defense or the one for the prosecution?
For the prosecution. The one for the prosecution. The day the other guy was there, I don't know where I was at, so I didn't hear him testify. But for the prosecution, there was a 90% contributor, and then there were 3 other people, and it was kind of broken down like 3% here, 4% here, 3% there. Is and they couldn't tell you who those people were. They couldn't tell you if they were male or female. And what I did like, so then the defense person got up there, and basically his lab isn't accredited. But what I did like was I think the prosecution called the DNA guy in a rebuttal, and the defense said, we talked a lot about how, our expert wasn't accredited. What school did you go to? And he said he went to.
I did like that too.
It was like,
I think it was Northridge or something.
Yeah, he was like, are you aware that he is an instructor at that school? Like, basically, like, that's your teacher, that's your instructor. but you want to
Mhm.
talk about his lab like not being accredited. I thought that was like a little savvy.
Yeah.
But basically, I also love the way, and I think I commented on this before this even happened, but they were like, hey, if you've been in a pool for hours, would
Mhm.
that leave less DNA on your fingertips? Would you be less
Mhm.
likely to leave a DNA footprint on something? And he was like, yeah, it's kind of like washing your hands. You know, you're
Mhm.
washing your DNA off. I was like, okay. So that I thought that was pretty, that, lent some reasoning. It was a little believable. But we're
Yeah.
so tied into DNA, connecting everything and tying everything up for
Well,
us.
that's what we've been taught with all these cop shows. So this is why people are like, Cliff was asking about the DNA. So the DNA the DNA was inconclusive, meaning that it was not here or there. So it means it possibly was there, but is inconclusive. So they can't conclude that his DNA was or wasn't on the gun. They can conclude that the DNA wasn't his DNA wasn't on the magazine. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean somebody else could have loaded the gun and he shot the gun. It was so the magazine, there was no DNA found, but on the gun, it was inconclusive, meaning that it's a possibility and it's also not a possibility. So this was something that I was seeing online as well. So, you can't rule it out. And I think if they found that his DNA was not found on the gun, then there would be more of like, okay, well, his DNA is not on there. But the inconclusive part, and then given the fact that we have two DNA experts, because even the defense's DNA experts said the same thing. They both said the same thing. There wasn't too much things that they didn't corroborate on. So the fact that they both said the same thing, and then even with the pool thing, it's like, yes, but he did so many other things in between. I would just went to the inconclusive. I don't think the pool thing really swayed me either way, but that was the thing. So the main thing is the DNA was inconclusive on the gun. So that was another kind of, and I think when they did the closing arguments, this was the thing that, they did their PowerPoint. This is the thing that they noted. So that was another thing that happened as well. So still feels, I know this is like people's lives, but it still felt like a whole movie.
It was. No, it really was. Like for me, it made more sense that the gun did not belong to Tory. So, why would his fingerprints or DNA be on the magazine? Right. And the way I think the prosecution shaped it, and even some testimony shaped it, is the driver was also, it was mentioned that the driver was also his security. Right. And then for the defense to bring out that on EJ's testimony, that they need protection, like the girls need protection when their bodyguards aren't around. So it makes sense that if Tory has his driver there, it's also his security. So there would probably be some sort of weapon present or some sort of deterrent present. So that's what I would take from that.
This is like, I really wish, and I know you agree because we talked about this an hour ago, that I really wish Quan would have taken the stand, because I think he was the only sober person, because that whole time that they're at Kylie's house, he was sitting outside in the car. So he was the only sober person other than EJ that would have been able to have given a testimony. Now, the prosecution did mention him in their closing argument, saying, well, he's Tory's guy, and, essentially alluding that he would cover for Tory. But if you're sworn under oath, then, I mean, again, telling the truth is relative, but I would have liked to see what he would have said. If he didn't remember anything, I would have been, okay, well, he doesn't remember anything. Now we can conclude that he is Tory's guy and blah, blah, blah. But I would have liked to hear what he would have remembered. So there's that. And another witness we have to talk about who never made it to the stand was Megan's bodyguard, Justin, who apparently was found in quotations after the fact and he turned himself in, and this is again social media reports, so I don't know how accurate this is, but if he was called to the witness stand and he wasn't found, could there be ramifications for him too?
Yeah, there could be. I think there was a warrant issued for him for his arrest because he was subpoenaed. And I don't know for sure, but they said that like LA like police officers or SWAT like raided his house looking for him. But yeah, there are consequences for not showing up if you've been subpoenaed to court. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he made it in. He made it in when jurors were in the middle of deliberations. If like he did show up, right?
No, he didn't. He didn't show up. It was
So that
Quan.
wasn't
I didn't see him show up. I heard that he turned himself in either the day of, or I think it was the day of that I saw the reports kind of floating around. But I don't think he showed up to court.
I thought he did. I thought someone, one of the family members who like we all are now was like, you know, Justin just went in and they decided, I don't know what they decided, but obviously like.
But here's the thing. What would he have said? He wasn't there for the incident. He wasn't at Kylie's house. The only thing that the defense made that alluded to Justin was the fact that he picked up Megan's things from Tory and Tory apologized. Tory, throughout the whole case, this is according to the defense, Tory never apologized for shooting Megan, which is obvious. If you did something, you're never going to apologize for it. However, like according to the prosecution, excuse me, Tory said, "Tell Megan I'm sorry." So I don't know what Justin would have been afraid of as far as taking the stand. His portion of the story literally is like 3 minutes, not even. He goes and picks up some stuff from Tory.
I honestly don't think they even needed him. I can understand why he wouldn't want to testify. Like there's so much coming out of this trial that was very misleading and wrongly reported. So I can understand why he wouldn't want to testify. Like anything could be said, and people take sound bites and run with them, right? They don't really understand the context. So I get that, but I don't know that they even needed him because they already had Kelsey's testimony and they had the exhibit of the text message. And they already had Tory apologizing to Kelsey on the phone. And then they already had Tory apologizing to Megan via text message. Like, why do you need a third apology? Why do you need a third apology? I don't think his testimony was necessary unless Tory supposedly told him, you know, I shot Meg. And how would they even know that, you know?
Right.
How would they even know that that's what Justin would say? Tory certainly didn't say that.
Well,
or tell the prosecution that he said that. So yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know either. But let's get to, I think, our last witness. I think it was, right? EJ was our last witness.
No, EJ was no.
Because the rest of them were callbacks.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So our last witness was EJ, and the defense was the one who brought him. And EJ was, EJ. I mean, you could tell like he didn't belong in court, meaning that like he wanted no business of it. They brought him in, and he was the one who established what happened prior to them getting in the car. And I'm sure hindsight's 2020. Regardless if Megan regrets sleeping with Tory or not, I'm 100% sure she regrets inviting Tory to Kylie's house. Because if that never happened, they could have done their pandemic thing. It would have fizzled out, and they both would have gone on with life. And again, this is not a blaming thing. It's like we've all done stupid things where we're just like, man, I wish I didn't respond to that text message. I wish I didn't do this. I wish I didn't do that. And, you know, I think just looking back at that night, you know, if that didn't happen, this wouldn't have been this discussion wouldn't be happening at all. But EJ was the one One thing he established as far as credibility, that he doesn't drink. So he came in and established what happened, what transpired through that night. So kind of, what did you think of EJ's testimony, and did you think it helped or hindered, or it didn't really matter what his being on the stand as far as the case?
I think for me, it just added more color, more details to the story, because I think I think Megan's testimony and Kelsey's September statement, they both point themselves in the best light, which is normal, natural. And I think EJ just came in with the third party details, like the objective observers details. So Megan said her wig was slipping when she testified. Kelsey was more like, it wasn't really about her wig slipping, it was some other things. EJ said her wig was slipping. I told her it was slipping. I took her to the bathroom and we couldn't get it right. So I told her it's about time to leave. So he added some good details.
Yeah. Another thing he did say, which was, there were some things that were a little bit comical, but another thing he did say was that he's worked with Kylie in the past, and something that Megan said to Kylie, it was just like, all right, now I know it's time to go. So apparently Kelsey and Kylie, they were getting on great, and they're hanging out by the pool. And then Kelsey's like, oh, you're really cool. And Megan allegedly pretty much said, I thought you would have been lame. And this is, under the alcohol influence. But EJ, knowing Kylie, he knew like it's time to go. And another thing he did say was like, you never want to be the last Black people at the house, which was his instinct was so spot on that I wonder if he's wishing that he would have been a bit more forceful. Mind you, they're all adults. So I get it. Like, I've been in those scenarios too, where it's like, look, you chose to drink this much. I have did my best, but you're going to want to do what you want to do. Right. But I wonder if he's thinking like, damn, I really wish that I would have, I don't know, slapped her upside her head a couple times, or really like shook her like out of alcohol. Or I wonder if he's thinking that as far as like, this would have been another thing where if he took them all home and said, yeah, no, you're not going to Tory's house, you're coming with me, this is a conversation we wouldn't be having either.
Hindsight is everything. So something also that just struck me was, when he recognized that, Megan was a little different, and it was due to alcohol, like certain things he was giving us, like alerted him to that. And then, I love that picture. And then Kelsey said the same thing. Like, again, the prosecutor was like, oh, you called her laugh obnoxious. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, okay, that's a little sour. But then when I heard her September 14th statement, it was more like a protective alertness. She was like, she was laughing, but it wasn't her regular laugh. So I knew something was a little different. So I was more aware, I was more alert. So it's like the both of them to me were being protective of her. Like that's what I got. It's just added color, added a little bit of color to and some objectiveness to the story.
To the story. So what happened, if you guys haven't been following the case, EJ comes in, he gives the testimony. They get the invite to Kylie's house. It's EJ, Kelsey, and Megan. They go to Kylie's house. They start drinking as soon as they get there, minus EJ. Odell Beckham was there, a couple of Kylie's friends, and also Corey was there as well. Megan decided to either make tacos or nachos. It's a toss-up. And then she came out. It depends on who you talk to. She came out. She realizes everybody
never ate them.
They never ate them. She realized that everybody's having fun without her. Everybody tells her to join, which I found both EJ and Kelsey both said the same thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. The tacos I don't know if the stove got turned off. I don't know what happened. Also, where's Kylie's help? Doesn't she have housekeepers or cooks or something? But whatever. They end up enjoying themselves. They're playing beer pong. They're in the pool. Kelsey gets stupid drunk. According to EJ, it's anywhere between 8 or 9 bottles. EJ takes Kelsey up to the bedroom, lets her pass out. He comes downstairs. I think when he comes downstairs, Tory is there, or at least he witnesses Megan call Tory FaceTime to invite him, and he's there in like 30 to 40 minutes, give or take. So now they're there. EJ's witnessing there's more drinks, there's more alcohol. He's seeing Kelsey comes downstairs. He's seeing Megan's wig kind of falling off her head, or slipping off. EJ tells Kelsey, hey, tell Megan it's time to go. I think in that course of that time, Megan also makes the statement to Kylie saying, I thought you were lame, which is, again, you already know it's time to go. Again, as Black people in a certain neighborhood, you don't want to be the last. I kind of felt him when he said that too. You don't want to be the last Black people at the house. So he's already looking at the scenario, because at that time, now all of Kylie's friends have left. So now it's EJ, Kelsey, Megan, Tory, and Kylie. And I think Corey might have been there. He also alluded to Corey also alluded to, like, it's time to go. It's time to wrap it up. Somehow it transpires, because EJ had said, all right, it's time to go. Kelsey had already put her on her pajamas. He packed all the bags, and he took the bags to his car, and he's like, it's time to go. And something transpired where instead of EJ taking Megan and Kelsey home, Tory's driver was going to take them home, which, again, I've been in Megan's position where you're kind of like cock blocking, like, you know what it is. So you figure it out. Now Tory's driver is taking them home. EJ, I want to make this clear too. EJ also wanted to make this clear as well. He didn't leave right after that happened. He left after the driver, Tory's driver, Quan, pulled out. So he followed them out, and then he went home. Halfway to Megan's house, mind you, 7 minutes away. So she might have been 3 or 4 minutes away from essentially her life not changing and just continuing with whatever she's doing. She decides that she left a Louis Vuitton slipper at Kylie's house, decides to go back to Kylie's house, instead of just letting Tory know, hey, I left my slipper, can you bring it for me? Goes into Kylie's house. Mind you, they're all still drunk. Megan and Quan go into Kylie's house. Kylie comes back out. Megan tells Kelsey that Kylie told them to get the fuck out of her house. So now in the car, it is Tory, Megan, Kelsey, and the driver. Tory is probably upset because you just cock-blocked him from possibly, I'm going to play this. Allegedly getting Kylie, some ish. They're in the car. They're now all drunk. They're arguing. Kelsey just finds out that Megan has also slept with Tory. They're arguing about that. He's probably pissed off about her cock blocking. And now she calls him. She essentially says his career hasn't been really anything. The only thing he's been on in the last year is on that Jack Harlow thing. And it gets super heated while Quan is driving. At one point, Megan gets out of the car, sits on Sunset, and doesn't want to be a part of it, which is another time where I think they said that her phone was either dead or on red, that Kelsey could have, but she was probably pissed off at Megan at that time, that Kelsey could have called somebody, because they're on Sunset. They have reception there. Kelsey could have called somebody and arranged to be picked up for them to be. But
why is that even relevant? Shoulda, coulda, woulda. So what? Like,
yeah, I know. I'm just painting.
Like, why does that even matter?
Painting the story. I'm just painting the story. I understand. I'm just painting the story for folks. I'm just piecing everything together. What I've seen. It doesn't matter whether she got out 1 time or 2 times. She got shot. Period. But she gets back in the car. It's quiet for a little bit. Then the arguing ensues, and they're still driving. And apparently, at that time, she was renting a house in Runyon. So that makes sense why they didn't have reception, because Runyon's terrible for reception. And then Tory decides to, I've had enough. Y'all done cock blocked me. You guys are arguing in my car. You're ruining my buzz, my high, whatever. Y'all get out of the car. Which again could have been like, all right, you guys get out of my car, and he could have drove off. Another opportunity for nothing to happen. Now, this is where we don't know what happened. And again, I'm piecing all that stuff, what I just said, through all the testimonies. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alfie, as far as what I've been saying thus far. So now the car stops. Megan gets out. Something that the defense has harped on is whether Megan got out of the truck and went to the front or the back. And I think we still don't know. Again, I know it doesn't matter, but I think we still don't know whether she was the front or the back of the car when the shooting did happen.
We know.
But where was it? What happened? Because I think she said she was the front. And I think Kelsey said she was at the back in her September 14th testimony.
No, it's always been oh God, I have it written down. When she got back in after sunset, they were still in the same place they were in when they left Kylie's house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Tory in the back driver's side, Megan in the front passenger, Kelsey in the back passenger.
Right.
That's how it always was. Except after the shooting, Tory's in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Megan's in the back passenger. Kelsey's in the back driver.
I think.
I wrote it down.
That last part is that last.
Like
part.
it's 60 pages of notes, but I wrote it down. I drew it and everything. But keep going.
So he kicks them out of the car. According to Kelsey's testimony, Megan gets out, and let's just say she's walking to the front. Kelsey also says, and this is her testimony with the detectives and the prosecution in September. Kelsey says she gets out of the car and she's like halfway out, and next thing she sees is Tory's in the front seat of the truck. Mind you, before that, when they got back and they eventually got back into the car, but when that shooting happened, Tory was in the back driver's side. So he managed to allegedly he managed to jump from the back to the front of the passenger side, and I guess grab the gun from the console and shoot the gun. Because also in Kelsey's testimony, she states that Tory threatened her, because now Tory and Kelsey were in the backseat of the car before the shooting happened. She claims that Tory threatened her and alluded that there was a gun in the console. He never pulled it out, but he kind of just hovered his hand over it.
So you're assuming that the gun that he allegedly shot Megan with was in the console. It could have been anywhere, though. Anywhere.
Correct. But if he, according to the Kelsey statement, we're going to kind of go where the possible placement of the gun is. And I kind of feel like, and I'm not a gun owner, but I do plan on being one very soon. I kind of feel like if he alluded to the gun being the console, he might have known that's where it is, just because that's his security guard, his security, etc., etc. Before I finish the story, Cliff saying there's a lot of reports that Kelsey changed her story on the stand compared to what she said in the beginning when the story first reported. What do you think of that, along with her getting immunity? So what happened with that is she only made the September 14th statement, and I think she briefly talked to the cops before that, but prior to that, she didn't want to talk to anybody. They actually had to, she was a hostile witness. They had to subpoena her to come and testify. So her story up until that point was she just didn't shoot Megan. That was her story. I don't think she got into too many details. I think she's upset at Megan. No, I think she said she was upset at Megan and her team, in particular Megan, for not protecting her or not saying, hey, I didn't shoot you, or Kelsey didn't shoot you, or saying Kelsey didn't shoot her.
Well, that's what I took. Let me say, if I can interrupt really quickly, like just going back to the console thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have in my notes, Tory and Megan started arguing. She's never heard, this is Kelsey talking about it. She says she's never heard Tory like that. He's calling her B's and H's. said, I'm from Canada. Kelsey said, I guess gangster or something. She said, my end, I will, well, excuse me. He said, my end, I will shoot you. Then reaches toward the middle console. And Kelsey said something like, okay, if you shoot me, I've got people who will ride for me. And at this point, they were still on Sunset Boulevard. And at this time, Megan demands Quan pull over the vehicle. Tory hops out. Well, I guess Megan had gotten out. Then Tory hops out. They have a convo. When they get back in the vehicle, it was calm. Everybody was calm. Tory apologized to Megan, and he's saying it out loud. They're also start arguing again, and then they also start hitting each other with their careers. Then Tory demands Quan put the girls out. He said, put these H's out. Megan hops out. She gets out, and then she looks up at the, let's see, Megan hops out, and then Kelsey gets out, and then she says she looks up after about the second gunshot. She said it was a very smooth transition. She didn't know how it happened, but she said he was shooting over the top of the right front passenger door, and he was shooting a gun. Megan was walking away, but by the third or fourth shot, she had turned around, and she was like a deer in the headlights. So that's the same thing. That's the same thing that Megan said. And to me, like there's a little bit of credibility there because
they haven't talked to each other.
Yeah, they're not talking to each other. And Kelsey, like she said later, she said, with respect to Meg, she said, you didn't protect me. You didn't protect me on the internet. You're telling people that I took hush money. Like she said in a video, she said something like, I would never switch up for money. She said she was a really good friend to her. And then she said, we could have gone home that night. We were on our way home. And this is like, she was almost crying. She was like, we're on our way home. She asked the driver, talking about Megan, asked the driver to take us back. And it wasn't because of a sandal. It was because Kylie was with Tory. It was just a sad statement, but it also filled in holes in Megan's testimony. So, and I could keep going.
Yeah. And in regards to the immunity cliff, we've kind of talked about it, but I'll touch on it briefly. So Kelsey was offered use immunity, meaning that she, as long as she doesn't perjure herself on the stand, what is it again? Because now I'm getting myself confused. She was offered use immunity, non-transactional immunity, meaning that technically they can still come after her. That's why she couldn't remember certain things. And that's why also they called her September 14th testimony, and they played it, all 80 minutes of it, for us and the jury, because it just didn't, her testimony on the stand, it wasn't like she said something that didn't happen. She just wasn't saying anything at all. And because she wasn't doing that, they were able to say, okay, well, clearly something has happened from September of this year to December of this year. Can we play the whole interview? And the judge said yes. And everybody got to listen to the 80-minute interview, which she seemed very lax, meaning that it didn't seem like she was being pressured in talking. She was telling the full story from the beginning to the end. There were parts where she was breaking down. So I wouldn't say that she was lying. She didn't lie on the stand. She just didn't say anything. So that's a big difference than completely lying. So there's that with that.
And they were legally, just so Cliff will know, they were able to get it in under the hearsay exception of prior inconsistent statement.
So we get to the shooting part where you are right. When you take in Megan and Kelsey's statements, and here we go with did Megan and Kelsey have a fight? We don't really know. Meaning that the only person that did say Megan and Kelsey had a fight was the defense, which I'm assuming they might have got that from Tory because they couldn't pull that just from anywhere. And then Sean Kelly. Both Megan and Kelsey both didn't say, which I find very odd too. Because one thing to note is that the defense said this in their opening statements, that Megan and Kelsey haven't spoken since the shooting. So in that whole time period since July 12th, 2020, they haven't, like they spoke via text a couple of times, but since that, in that whole time period, they haven't talked, and they both didn't say anything about a fight. Meaning to me, as far as girl code, even though I don't rock with you right now, I'm not going to talk about that. What did you make of it? Or do you think the fight didn't happen at all?
I don't know. I don't know. It was so I'm still boggled by what happened. I think for just knowing how I was at 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. I think for Megan, I think I told you this before, she realized that she could have lost everything, everything in a heartbeat. And I think that she leaned on her team. Like she said, she only wanted to be with her manager. She leaned on her team. She leaned on the people who could help her in this situation. And I think her team looked at this as an opportunity to really close ranks. And just outside looking in, I'm not sure. But I know that Kelsey said, you know, she was calling and trying to find out where Megan was. She didn't even know Megan had was in work. And this was like 3 or 4 days later. And she was like, she said this twice, me and Meg move as a unit.
Right.
Me and Megan are supposed to move as a unit. So I think this was just an opportunity for everybody. But did they fight? I don't know. You know, nobody brought out Kelsey's personality or her propensities except EJ. EJ made it seem like she was a delightful person. He said that she was the life of the party. She and Kelsey got along well. Even when, you know, when Megan talked about her, she cried. I know when Kelsey talked about Megan, I think I said this, she said, like, I know Megan like the back of my hand. And she said, I still feel like I know her like the back of my hand. And for me, this saga.
She said that on the stand, I think, too.
Yeah, for me, this has been about two women who are broken, you know, and I do hope that, like, eventually one day, you know, they'll get some healing, you know, for this relationship, because it's, you know, just to honor the relationship that they had, because I find it odd that they haven't spoken about something so traumatic. And Kelsey said she had PTSD, you know, that night. So that's another thing that hit me that night. She was like, she specifically said she tried to hit up her mom on Facebook Messenger, because her mom's always on Facebook.
Yeah.
Wasn't answering. Sister wasn't answering. Nobody was answering her. And she said, like, you know, she called a guy that she had been talking to and was like, just be on the phone with me, you know, because like some craziness happened.
Right.
Like, you remember she said Megan was calm.
Yeah, very calm, like unusually calm.
Yeah. And then Quan said, what? Kelsey, they do this all the time. And Kelsey was confused. Like, what? Because she did not know that apparently Megan and Tory had some sort of relationship.
No, she had already known that because Tory had already told her. But somebody alluded to one of the journalists'
testimony, though. That's like it's different testimonies. It's like, which one do you want to believe?
Right. Because somebody alluded to that Tory and Megan's relationship was violent. And I just don't see that. I do see possible arguments, but I just don't see like violence on that level. I don't see it. I can't, maybe because I don't want to see it, but I just don't see it. I think it's pandemic. You're essentially having a lot of sex, you're drinking a lot, and you're eating because you can't do anything else. Like, I don't see like violent altercations because there's really nowhere else you could. Do you all remember? I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking to people who. Do you all remember the pandemic? We couldn't go nowhere. You had bubbles. Like people were dying. Like, it's not like you could like, all right, well, I see her on IG. Let me go and hop over to her house. Like, you weren't trying to do that. There were some people who were risking it all. But not everybody was trying to do that, especially if you already had something like, all right, cool, we just gonna just do us. So I just don't see that. But yeah, I don't remember that statement, but by that time, when that statement did happen, or when Kelsey said it did happen, she already knew that Tory had already said that they Megan and him have been having relations. So her in-person testimony. She said that her in-person testimony, I think
she said that she and Megan were fighting because she found out while they were on the drive there that Megan had betrayed her again. But in her September 14th statement, she didn't mention that at all. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay.
But Megan said that Tory said, you need to be honest. You need to quit lying to your girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then I don't know if it was the opening statement, but I think it was the opening statement where the defense said, Kelsey said this happens all the time. And then they made mention of Ben Simmons and the baby, which I don't know if they threw that in just to, because that was the next day, that was the headline.
That was the headline.
It wasn't the fact that, hey, there's another witness who said that it wasn't Tory.
Right.
Like throughout that was the thing that everybody took. And I was just like, why are we,
yeah.
Society. So we get to the point now where they're stopping the car. Kelsey does her statement and she says that Tory shot at Megan. So just for the sake of argument, we're going to go by what Kelsey said. Then after that's all happened, Megan drops to the ground. She crawls over to a driveway. Kelsey goes to comfort her. According to Kelsey, Tory is coming towards Megan and Kelsey gets in between Tory and Megan. And apparently that's where a fight happens. And that's how, according to the prosecution, Kelsey loses a nail and her necklace. Then I guess Quan comes over and he says the cops are coming. And because they didn't know where they were, that they rather have taken their chances going back into the car with Tory than staying in a neighborhood they were unfamiliar with, which I guess because you're not only unfamiliar with the neighborhood, you're unfamiliar with the state, because they are from Texas, and I don't think they've been living in LA for long enough to be familiar with, like, all right, yeah, this area's, you're not familiar with the area. If you're familiar with your area, okay, well, I'm in this city, I'll be cool. Or if I'm in this city, that's not gonna be a good look. You're not familiar with the area, so you might not know. So you're taking your chances with, the devil you do know. So they hop back in the car, but by that time, after the 5 gunshots, 4 neighbors have already called 911. So now they're in the car, they're driving on Sunset. Another thing that we'll never find out, where was Quan taking her? Was he taking her to the hip hop doctor to stitch her up? Because again, if they got to the doctor, then there's a hip hop doctor. I'm willing to bet money on it. If they got her to the doctor, then we would not be talking about this at all either. So we don't know where Quan was heading. However, the 911 calls came in. The cops were on alert. They saw the truck passing. They make a U-turn. They said guns were shot. There was gunfire. So they stopped the car. There's 4 units, and they demand everybody outside the car. And that's where I guess the trial actually starts picking up, because they find the gun warm to touch in the front seat where Tory got out of the car, and where, I guess, again, going to the process of elimination and why possibly only Tory was swabbed for DNA and nobody else, is because he was in the front side of the seat of the car. However, if that's the case, then he should have been the only one swabbed for GSR. But again, if there's any cops or anybody knows cops, that's an answer for them, because I don't know why that wasn't the case. And then we get to the whole social media bacchanal, and we're here. And closing arguments. Do you want to go to the closing arguments?
Yeah, I want to.
Or anything else you want to kind of fill in?
Yeah, just I'm looking at Kelsey's. I was looking at Kelsey's statement. She says after Meg turned around, she was like a deer in the headlights, and Megan described herself as being frozen.
Mm-hmm.
She said Tory was angling the gun down in her direction. She said he wasn't saying anything. She said that, in the September 14th statement, as well as testifying. She said she doesn't know where anybody got the dance beat from, but She said she doesn't know where he got the gun, but he earlier had motioned to the middle console. Then she says after Megan was shot, she limped to the driveway. Her instinct was to protect her friend. She ran to her and grabbed her, and she saw blood. Kelsey says she was in defense mode. Tory's approaching them, and Kelsey thinks he's coming to attack us. She steps in between him and Meg. She says Tory assaulted her, Kelsey. She said it was a physical altercation. Quan then said, that's when he said, Kelsey, they do this all the time. She said she was still in defense protection mode, and she said her reaction or her thought was to cause a distraction. So she said she jumped in the vehicle and made it jerk. You remember that?
Yeah.
I thought that was so interesting. She said she made it jerk, and
that drew Tory away from Megan.
Right. And she said it did exactly what I needed it to do, which was get Tory from Megan. She said, and I don't know how this happened, but she said Tory started pulling her by her hair and neck. And before she was only in defense mode, but then she became afraid for her life. She said she just went flat. And at some point, like while they were in their tussle, she said she went flat and she said, Tory, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And then he said, at that point, he let her go. And then we skipped to the part where everybody's back in the car. Megan was very calm. Kelsey says she was distraught. She started to cry. She continues the story, and we hear her crying on the tape. Mm-hmm. Megan said, Kelsey, call Ferris. That's her co-manager. She said nobody was answering the calls, so she sent a text. That's when she sent it to, I guess, Justin. She said she starts crying again. Kelsey does on this tape. Then she said she sent a help message to her mom, the one on Facebook Messenger. She said she was mentally and physically hurt. She said she made a call to the guy she was talking to at the time and said, hey, I need to talk. I just need somebody to stay on the phone with me. And then that's when she gets into the part about how she felt unprotected, because she said TMZ had picked up the video, and all they knew was Megan was in the hospital and Tory and Kelsey were in custody. And anyway, it goes on and on from there. And I think that's where I was like, where's Quan? That was my question.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that would have been a perfect time to wait. So they had Kelsey, then they had, I think the GSR doctor, and they had the DNA, not the doctor, the GSR professional, the DNA professional. And then I think they were allegedly looking for Justin, and that's when the defense called. And I believe, like, I don't understand. I forget the defense. I don't understand why the prosecution never called Quan.
Well, I think it was did they subpoena Quan? I know early on there were issues about like locating some witnesses. So I don't know if they didn't know where he was, if they were able to serve a subpoena on him or not.
Can't you issue a warrant, or you have to serve a subpoena first?
Well, you need an address. You need to know where the person is. So, and I think they didn't have an address. Like, they didn't have any way to contact him. From what I understood, like, I could be wrong, but
yeah, this is definitely, Cliff. This is like this whole, when you think about it and you take away, and this what saddens me the most, because I think part of me, and I mean, obviously I don't owe anybody anything, but part of me is wants both sides to be happy, meaning that I definitely want Megan to get justice, but I also don't want to see a Black man in jail. So that's kind of where I'm torn when I see things on social media, accusing Megan of being a liar, but it's like there are bullets in her. There's scars. Like, we saw it. We saw the X-rays. We spoke to the doctor was on the witness stand, etc. And then on the flip side, it's like you just don't want to see another Black man go to jail.
Let me ask you a question though. If she were disfigured, would that change your mind with respect to not wanting to see a Black man go to jail? Like, let's say, she was shot, God forbid, in her face, and she was completely disfigured and her career was destroyed. Would you feel the same way?
I think that's okay. So now that's a good question. I feel like because it was in her feet, like I said before, I don't think it was intentional. I feel like, I mean, who shoots for like, if somebody's going to shoot a gun, who's she going to shoot for their feet? I feel like it happened more as to show a sign of like, I'm establishing dominance and not to hit her. If you shoot somebody in their face or their chest or any part where it's a big target, that to me is intentional. And then it's like, yes, you should go to jail. I think
well, let me ask you this. What if in error, not saying that he did it, but let's hypothetically say he shot to show dominance and it hit her in her femoral artery in her thigh on accident. She bled out and died. Would you still feel the same way about not wanting to see a black man go to jail?
See, and you're right. And that's where I feel very conflicted. That's why I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know if I feel that way because we were literally, I don't know if I feel that way. It's because literally for 10 days, we literally saw him every day for 10 days. We saw his family. We saw him with his son. We saw him be interactive. I don't know if that's now you kind of, I don't know if the right word's attachment or whatever. I don't know if that was the reason. I don't know why I feel the way I do. I just feel like that was, it's something where it's like, damn, I don't want to see that happen. But also like, I don't think Megan's a liar. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why I felt the way I do. I just know that I'm seeing this man and his family every single day. And the story was so, I think too, the story was just so out there. There was so many different variables to me. There were so many holes. Like if Quan came up and said, I don't know what happened, then in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, Tory did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, because he was literally the only other person in the car that witnessed everything. And yeah, I don't know why I feel the way I do. Like I see all the postings like, oh, well, Tory deserves everything that he gets. I get that. But then it's like, I don't know if it's because for literally 10 days, I've seen this man and his family and his father and, you know, all this stuff and his son and the kids and, you know, all these people that it's just kind of like, man, I don't want to see. And then actually witnessing it happen, like him being put in handcuffs. I don't know if that's just like, damn, I don't want to see that just for my personal versus justice. Now, again, on the flip side, if that was me or a family member that got shot, then yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm very on the fence with, it's not as cut and dry for me. I don't know why. And any psychologists out there, please let me know why I feel that. I don't know why I feel the way I do, but that's just, in all honesty, why.
It's a life that's over, you know, or it's again going back to Kelsey's statement. We could have gone home that night. We were on our way home. She asked the driver to take us back, and it wasn't because of a sandal. It was because Kylie was with Tory. Like none of this had to happen. It's stupid. None of this had to happen.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like I get you, like there are human beings with real, like you saw a full range of emotion in that courtroom. You saw a baby boy cry out for his father. It's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. And you know, and you only saw one side, you know,
right.
You have to live with that for like 10 days. We all did. So I understand what you're saying. Like I get it.
Yeah.
But,
and then I also get Megan's point of view when she came to the stand and she essentially said that she has to be strong and she can't look vulnerable and she can't do, and like I empathize with her in so many ways because and again, I don't want to speak for all Black women, but this is something that in the workplace, in like all scenarios, you're already being judged, you're already being characterized, all this stuff. And so now it's just kind of like you've already received all this backlash. You already know after you get off the stand, you're going to receive more backlash. You already know either way, if he was found not guilty, that would have been a whole nother story as far as her career as well. She would have been labeled a liar.
Mm-hmm.
So like her positioning and and the thing that the defense said is like, oh, this is helping your career. Like if he was found not guilty, I don't think it would have improved her career. She would have been labeled a liar.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that would have benefited her. But I also think that her not dealing with this for the last 2 years, she would have been somewhere else musically. Like opportunities that, you know, she might have missed because they don't want to be associated with the drama that's going on. And vice versa. The defense also hinted at the opportunities that Tory missed as well because of everything that's going on. So yeah, it's you know, Cliff saying 3 lives affected in the worst way. Definitely more than 3 lives, but 3 main lives, yes, for sure. It was just it was a very crazy story. And I've been saying this for the last maybe 6 or 7 days. We'll never know exactly what happened. All we know is that they did closing arguments, and at the end of those closing arguments, there was three charges: assault with a semi-automatic firearm, a discharge of a firearm with gross negligence, and having a concealed gun in unregistered. Having a concealed gun, having a unregistered gun in a car. I believe that was what it was. And he was found guilty on all 3 counts. And he was handcuffed and taken away. Like I said, there has been a petition that's been going out. Legally, at this moment, you said you've never seen a petition actually do anything. But you know, it's California. You never know. Although they just announced
nothing. It does nothing except maybe bring attention to it, his plight. But that's it.
Yeah, but then what? Like, I mean, I think another thing too. Maybe you can say yay or nay. Once the jurors make the decision, it's not like can they appeal it? Like, how isn't the only way they can appeal it is if something the judge did incorrect throughout the case. They can't appeal a jury decision.
Yeah, they can. No, you can appeal for anything, but you can find do some research and see if anything happened amongst the jurors, because you can interview the jurors after, you know, they announce their verdict. You know, so you could find a number of things that may have gone wrong with individual jurors or during deliberations. You can state that there was something like evidence that the judge either allowed in or didn't allow in that was improper. And I think Tory's dad was saying that there was so much evidence that he saw that wasn't allowed in, I think. But there are a host of reasons you can appeal. And hopefully, you know, that's what his lawyers are working on.
Is that why they asked for it? Because it's when is it? June 27th or January 27th? The sentencing?
I think that's just the date that the judge set for sentencing. So what happens also, usually there's like a 30-day delay or so, because there's something called like a pre-sentencing investigation. It might be termed differently from state to state, but basically somebody will interview Tory and, you know, take into account a lot of things before he's sentenced, right? So you'll look at, you know, his prior criminal history, any statements from family members, maybe teachers, people of standing in your community. You'll take into account, you know, if he's a parent, you know, his contributions to his community, to society. Like there are a ton of things that you take into account before sentencing, and or that go into that pre-sentencing investigation that the judge will take into account. And during sentencing, I think you can do victim impact statements, or you can also have people speak on your behalf. So, you know, it's normal that the judge would delay sentencing for 30 days.
Cliff saying, I don't think it would hurt her career either way. Women would have supported her regardless. Cliff, I would love to say you are correct, but I have seen and witnessed a lot of women who weren't supportive of Megan just because she's a woman. So in theory, yes, but that's why it's so weird to me. It wasn't cut and dry. I think just because there are so many variables, people just didn't know what to believe, and they just went with whatever they think happened, or whoever they felt more closely to. The beauty about social media is that you have access to pretty much everybody. Especially during the pandemic. Tory was one of the pandemic kings. He was active on social media. He was interacting with fans and stuff like that. So that wasn't the case. It wasn't all women. So that wasn't happening. So we'll see. Another thing that I did actually ask his lawyers was about his immigration status, and they said, well, we're going to win. So, that's not for discussion. This was obviously
serious.
Yeah. So
when was that?
This was before the obviously the verdict.
Oh, wow.
So,
I mean, like before closing statements or during the trial or
no, this was after closing statements. I asked the family member and I asked his lawyer, and they both said, the family member said, we don't have to worry about that. And the lawyer said, we don't have to worry about that. We're going to win, which leads me to believe. And the reason I say this is being an immigrant myself and still going through the immigration process. If you are legally here and you have your green card, then you saying he has his green card would have been an easy thing to say. Them not saying that makes me believe that he's on like a permanent resident, which is, you can stay for an extended period of time. However, you can be kicked out of the country and you can't vote. Those are kind of the two main things that I know of. There's a whole host of things. I'm not even gonna get on this whole immigration thing, but there's a host of other things. That with that being said, I might be wrong. I'm just saying that if he does have his green card, then I'm pretty sure they would have just volunteered that information. Because that's another thing that I saw floating online, like, oh, he's gonna get deported, he's gonna get this, he's gonna get that. Another person who said something was the whole Shine case when Diddy and the shooting in the club. He served his time, I think it was 6 or 7 years, and then he got deported back to Belize. And now he's like, a parliament official or something, and now he can get to come into the country under that status. But anytime those type of scenarios happen, especially to the state of California, or I think New York has, very strict gun laws, that's where that happens. As far as it actually happening, immigration is so all over the place. And if you have a good lawyer, potentially, and that's a whole different lawyer. Like, let me know if I'm wrong, Alfie, as far as the set of things that you need to know. But, there might be a loophole, there might not be, I don't know. As far as my basic knowledge, given my experience of dealing with them, that's what it seems to be. That might be.
I don't have experience with immigration law, but I do know that he would, I believe whatever he's sentenced to, he would have to serve his time here. And then there would be some type of referral, like an ICE referral. And he may be even transferred to like an ICE holding facility. And those are not nice before he has his deportation hearing and is sent back.
And the deportation hearing, then here's the thing that I do know. If you don't have a lawyer and you have the state representing you, then you're sushi. But if you have somebody representing you, and this is from speaking from experience, if you have somebody who knows the immigration law representing you, then there's a lot of loopholes that the average person, if you're just reading through USCIS, you wouldn't find that they know of. So,
And what's USCIS? For those of us who don't know.
oh, just immigration.
U.S. immigration. Yeah.
Yeah, immigration. Yeah, that's how often I used to call them. That's a whole nother story. Anywho, that's where we are. We've tried to condense everything, 3 weeks into 2 hours and 30 minutes.
A lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think we kind of touched on everything. Another thing that I did see was that Tory was on what is it? That was the real stickler too, probation, and he wasn't on probation. So that's another thing. That's another stickler that was in social media. Not so much the courts, but they wanted to definitely tell the difference to the jurors. That was a difference from probation versus diversion program. So that was another thing that I saw reports and people talking about, but that wasn't the case. He wasn't on probation.
Okay, so to just a layperson, a regular person, to a regular defendant, being diversion and probation to them might be the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might say, "Oh, I'm on probation," because it's the same idea, right? So usually, if you're a first offender, you do what they call a pretrial diversion, right? And you'll be given like the same requirements. You have to do the same things that a person on probation would have to do, meaning you might have to go to AA meetings. You might have to do a substance abuse evaluation. You might have to do community service. You might have to, pay money. You might have to be monitored, right? Mm-hmm. So it's easy for somebody to say, "Oh, I'm on probation," rather than to tell somebody, "Oh, I'm doing pretrial diversion," right? But the guy, I think the detective, Stogner, he couldn't testify, or some guy couldn't testify to that because Tory was doing diversion in Florida.
So yeah.
Testify to how their pretrial diversion worked. But
yeah. Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the lead detective. He was
Let's move on.
All I gotta say is I think the reason why so many people, whether they're for or against Tory, were confused is because there are so many things that didn't have to, and this is something that I learned from Alfie, that didn't have to do with the case, but just on the grand scheme of social media and the way we communicate and the way that we talk, and also what we watch on television. There's so many legal dramas and court stuff and all this other stuff that we're looking at this, and it's like, it's not cut and dry. It's not black and white. And if it's not black and white, then I think Cliff had mentioned it early on, the reasonable doubt thing. I was calling reasonable doubt from day 3 or 4, just because there was just so much going on. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, when the jury goes in to deliberate, they're not looking at all the elements that we're talking about. They're looking at the evidence that they're presented that was admitted into court. They're looking at the law. So I think everybody who was in court, minus yourself, became, pseudo lawyers, but they're actually looking at the law and comparing, contrasting, and trying to make sense of it. And there's 12 of them. So when you take all those elements out, all the extra stuff, this is what you have left. And they ask certain questions to the judge. Do you want to kind of talk about that quickly before we get out of here? Like the stuff that kind of the 1 or 2 things that they asked the judge, where I think you said the lawyers eventually just said they were becoming nervous because of the questions that the jury were asking.
I think we touched on this earlier. I'm like, oh, my notes are all over the place right now, but I think they asked the difference between willful and purposeful. And I, when they did that, I knew that they were narrowing down, like, what they were going to decide, but I knew there was a conviction coming. And I think they asked about the 8.5 pounds of pressure. They wanted I don't know, what do you call it? The expert,
the gun expert?
Gun expert, yeah. They wanted his testimony, and I think they wanted some part of Kelsey's testimony, And they also asked for some of Sean Kelly's testimony, which again, I don't understand that at all. But
so yeah, I have it right here from the media department. A better definition of the word willful and on purpose. And the responses: willful means having a purpose or willingness to commit an act. Please refer to I can't read this, the rest of this. It's I thought my handwriting was bad, but that was essentially what they asked for. And I think I think you said once they start asking questions, it's never a good scenario.
No, when they start asking questions specifically for me about the charge, when they're trying to line up language of the charge, because to me they're now trying to match the facts to the elements of the charge. So I was like, oh, okay, well, for me, I thought that they were deciding between the negligence charge and the assault charge, but
yeah, because there was a few people I did speak to that they thought that it would only be, if there was going to be a charge, it would have only been was it having the concealed weapon?
No, to me, it's like, if it's going to be the possession of the unregistered firearm, then it's going to be either the negligent discharge of a weapon or assault with a deadly weapon. So I thought it would be the negligent discharge of a weapon and possession of an unregistered firearm. I didn't know that it would be.
So yeah, so here we are, convicted of all 3 counts. They placed handcuffs. He's in jail. I think TMZ reported that he had a decent Christmas dinner, which is like, how does I mean, I know how they know, but in January he's going to be called up for sentencing, and a lot of reports have been saying he's getting 22 years, and that's also incorrect because he hasn't been sentenced. I think the correct terminology is he can get up to 22 years, but I think you said that that's highly unlikely that he will get 22 years.
I don't think it's likely. I don't know what the exposure is on each of these charges, but usually judges will, your attorney requests it a lot of times, but judges will order that your sentences are served concurrently, meaning for each charge, each sentence is served at the same time. So if you get 5, 5, and 5, instead of doing 15 years and serving everything consecutively, it will currently. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Also, again, but
the judge can also say no, right? Or do most judges say yes?
Most judges say yes.
Okay.
But it's in his discretion. But also, you'll take into account so many factors, namely, this is his first offense, and you'll look at the pretrial investigation, the pre-sentencing investigation, and you'll look at like all of the factors that mitigate a very long sentence. And I doubt he'll get anywhere near 20 something odd years, but that is his exposure.
All right. Well, Alfie,
you okay, baby?
I appreciate you. You've definitely been in a world where I think a lot of us who follow this case and many other cases, and watch TV, we often think that we're lawyers. I certainly did after this case, but I clearly know I'm not. But it's nice to refer to somebody, especially within the community, that knows what's going on and can break it down. And we can actually have an intelligent conversation about it and not go off of emotions, which is,
Thank you. I hope I was helpful out there, because at times people were just hiding emotions. It was a lot for me, but I hope I was helpful, especially just with the objections and people not understanding like when you can lead and why you can lead, and what an adverse witness or hostile witness is. So it was a great experience for me too, just meeting you guys. And
and what do you, I guess, from your objective, because again, like I said, I'm still kind of torn. And maybe if you did change and I don't know, that's something I might really need to explore. But what do you hope, or what do you think will happen, like as far as sentencing and also the appeal? Like, do you think that there is a possibility for appeal, and what does that look like? Does he get back out and then they have to retry the case again, or what
No,
does all those possibilities look like?
I don't know. So when you file an appeal and the appellate court gets it, you only look at the record. There's no additional testimony. You only look at the record, and you look at the arguments that the attorneys make. So, who knows what can happen. I know that they are going to file an appeal, as in, like, I'd put money on it. They should, they must.
Right.
But no, he's not gonna get out, while there's an appeal, and he's gonna retry the case. Like, and it also
What happens if they are granted, I guess, what's the terminology? If they're like, yes, there is right to appeal, then what's the next steps?
So if his appeal is awarded, and it depends. It really depends on the grounds for the appeal, whether the conviction will be overturned, or whether the prosecution will decide that they want to retry the case because there's some type of additional evidence that was discovered, or there was some misconduct with the jury, or something of that sort. So it just depends. Like, if he does get out, the prosecution will have to decide, do I want to retry this case? And
I would think they would have to. Like, I feel like it had so much attention that I think, just as far as ego wise, take just, on the emotional level, ego wise, it's just like,
it just depends, and it's not always their call. It's they're deputy district attorneys. Like, you never know if you'll have the same district attorney. Priorities could change, mandates could change. You just never know. This appeal could take a while. So, is somebody up for re-election? What's been happening in the city? What's the temperature like? It just depends.
Well, here it is. I hope we, meaning Alfie, answered all your questions. I was just here to give the layman's perspective of what was going on. Like Cliff has been saying in the chat, and I'm sure you guys who are watching, at the end of the day, it's just sad all around. This was something that just didn't need to happen. It was senseless.
I've got 3 minutes of battery life left.
Okay. All right. Well,
or
I mean, I want to get everybody your information if they need to contact you, so you can plug in. Yeah. I don't want to be like mid thing, so you can plug in while I give my spiel if you want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, TK, first of all, let me thank you for encouraging me. I just set up my fresh YouTube today, and it's called The Black Letter Law, coming to you hot. I'm also at Tea and Freckles, but I'm on Instagram. I like art, and I like peace and sunshine. So you can find me there doing fun stuff like that.
She'll also have an Instagram page by the name of The Black Letter Law. That's going to happen too.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. That's true. You guys have me out here. Yeah. Oh, you know what?
You probably should plug in your phone.
Yeah, I'm at a fresh 2 seconds. 2%. Hang on 1 second. I'm listening. Okay.
So while she's plugging in her phone, like I said, thank you guys so much for joining, for listening. This is not meant for a yay or nay. If you want to sign the petition, go ahead and sign the petition. I really wanted this, and this is one of the reasons why I got into this industry, was about education and growing. So this was something that was senseless that happened, and no matter where your emotions, where you are on your emotions of whether you felt like he should have been convicted or felt he shouldn't have been convicted, et cetera, I really wanted everybody to understand what we saw being in the court, and the factors that happened on why he got convicted. And, you know, I really wanted everybody to hear that and also hear from a legal perspective. So that was my reasoning for doing this. Is definitely not like a clout thing. As I'm just about education, and it was senseless. And you guys heard me say this before. I want to see Black people win. So it's very unfortunate what happened. Megan did get shot. She deserves justice as well. But I am honestly willing to bet a lot of money if she ever actually comes out. And I know she did her testimony, but she's actually able to come out and do a wrap up of everything that's happened. I'm willing to bet she is wishing that she never hit him up, period, to invite him to Kylie's house. And then probably even just in general, I think she did say that on the stand. She wished she just never met him, which, I mean, you know, that's hindsight. But I think if you just take it to just not inviting him to Kylie's house, none of that would have happened. There's a series of different, you know, directions they could have gone throughout that whole night. But here we are. With that being said, Alfie, where can everybody find
this? You know, this is my first time. Well, no, it's my fourth time because of you guys. I don't know what I'm doing. Cliff, you said put a link to my YouTube in the chat. I don't know how to do that yet. I just at the Black Letter Law.
Oh, let me find it. I'll put it in there. Oh gosh, rookies. I'm just
next I'll be a pro. Next, I just need a week. I need a week and I'll be a pro. And
my encouragement to Alfie is that I would like her to I mean, I think we have actually the Meg Thee Stallion case coming up in January, and, you know, maybe even breaking down that, because what happens for me, which sometimes I tend not to listen, because, you know, one thing about being in court, they didn't allow us to take in the Black Letter Law. They didn't allow us to take in recording devices. We had to turn our phones off. It was very like, oh girl, I can't find your page.
Oh, hold on.
The Black Letter Law?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah. Wait, I think you sent it to me on the thing.
I just did it like today.
Oh, you know what? You might not be able to find it because it's a new page and they don't give you, you get like these letters for your YouTube stuff.
Hold on. I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna text it to you.
I see it here.
See, I just texted to you.
Okay, because I just found it on your email. So let's see if we can find it. But
subscribers.
You just text it to me.
Go ahead and subscribe.
Yeah, but can people? I think Cliff wants to know how to also contact you. This is why I'm encouraging you to do your IG page as well. Because
so just DM me on Tea and Freckles. George put that in the chat. Let's see.
Because ain't nobody gonna find this long ass YouTube link until you hit like 10,000 followers or something on YouTube. Damn, both my eyelash lady and my nail lady want to reschedule. Oh yeah, I have that. So I'll put that in the chat. But that's the reason why I called Alfie, because I didn't want to be out here I put that in the wrong chat, making speculations about things that I don't know. I didn't go to school for. You know, we're all experts at different things, and that's why this is happening. And also too, we are both in the court. We couldn't bring in recordings into the court. We had to shut our phones off. There's a lot of note taking. Some people are better note takers than others. Some people tend to read the headlines and then that's it. That was something that I saw a lot of. And because I was in court every single day, I really want to talk about that. Really want to talk about what actually happened. So in the chat, I did put Alfie's IG handle. So I guess if people have questions, they can hit you up. Or what would you do? What is your preference? What are you looking to accomplish with this newfound world of I guess lawyering in the social media age?
For me, it's about education. So what I saw was a lot of people who just didn't look like us reporting on us, and I saw a lot of sensationalism and a lot of bias reporting and a lot of sound bites, and I really didn't like that. And I thought that the reporting was just stoking the flames on both sides, and I just really wanted to be able to educate more and just bring a more objective view to what was happening, and just like take the sensationalization out of it.
Yeah, it's not as sexy. It's not as amazing, but um, without all the extra stuff, the court case was it was fine on its own. And if we can just sift through everything and kind of figure out how we got to this point, then here we are. With that being said, I'm not going to keep Alfie any more longer. It's been 3 hours, and I'm sure y'all are not going to listen to all 3 hours of this broadcast, so I'm not going to go any longer. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Shout out to So Hip Hop for having me cover this case. Like I said, I met some really amazing people. I learned a lot. And I guess another wrap up. What is your takeaway from all of this, Alfie?
A lot, showing up is half the battle. I think for me, I wanted to see Sean Holly, because I've been following her for a while, and she's like an amazing litigator. And I just walked into a world of people who were open and who.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Who's Sean Holly?
So Sean Holly is she was on the Dream Team with the O.J. Simpson trial. I think she started off with the Cochran firm. Mm-hmm. So Sean Holly, she's an amazing. She practices civil and criminal litigation. I think this new show on Hulu is based on Sean Holly. She's a Black woman. She was a public defender, and now she works for a really large civil firm.
Is that the same firm that Tory's lawyers came from? Because I know somebody mentioned that, but I was like, I didn't see a Black lawyer on his team.
So she did the pretrial hearing a couple of months ago. No, she did the pretrial hearing. It was December last year, December 21. She was trying some other case. I don't think they're from the same firm though. For whatever reason, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know if McDezian is of counsel or something. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, who knows? But I do know that she wasn't present at all.
Yeah.
For the trial.
Okay.
Look, I just signed up with my Instagram.
Look at you multitasking. So your lesson was what now?
Just showing up is half the battle. If just be present, show up, and welcome what comes. And so my takeaway was just learning a lot. And I appreciate it being embraced by this community of reporters and bloggers and YouTubers. It was just very different for me. Mm-hmm. But I've learned so much. And also just shit. I said the word here. Just remembering, there was a moment for me where I just like really had so much gratitude for my real friends that I grew up with, like in my 20s. Like we did some stuff, like any of us could have been in this Megan, Tory, Kelsey situation. And I just like have just gratitude for them and love for them because, we were living and lifing and anyway.
Yeah.
TK, what'd you take away from this?
I'm still processing. I was still very and again, I don't know why I feel this way, but I was still very like emotional. I think I was thinking about like his son and his like it was just it surprised me how, because again, I've said this before, I do think that he pulled the trigger. But there's just something where it's just like I don't I just want to see all of us win. And I really, you know, yes, the opportunity was great, and you know, being able to cover this, and this is something that we're probably going to talk about from years to come. I'm sure there's going to be a Lifetime movie or something, some type of version of it somewhere. But I think, I guess when you take away all of that, I think my takeaway is that be grateful for what you have, and then those rash decisions could cost you. You know, I pride myself on trying to be 2 or 3 steps ahead, or you know, being of right mind. And this is not, you know, saying, you know, stop drinking or any of that stuff, but I think for me, being an immigrant has always made me very hyper aware of scenarios. I never want to be in any scenario where the cops is asking me about anything about anybody. I didn't see nothing. I didn't do anything. I didn't hear it. Don't ask me. Just because of that. But I think, you know, that the situation, like we've said on plenty of times, could have been so much different if, you know, a number of things happened. So, but again, yeah, I did stupid stuff in my 20s, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think I really have a very concrete takeaway. Maybe I will have a takeaway after I do my vision board for 2023. Maybe I'll have a really concrete takeaway, but I think my goal for tonight was just to give all the information that we both collectively had, and then get the legal side of it from you. And you know, if you guys really want to know, if you're joining it at halfway or midway through or at the end, if you really want to know what happened on that, yeah, nonstop drinking isn't a great idea if you can't control yourself. But you know, you have a team there. That's a whole nother situation. But if you really want to know what happened, and you really want to have kind of a leg to stand on, because what irritates me is when people talk about things, but they're only going by the headings. If you're only going by what you saw on one post, and it's just a screen grab versus actually what happened. If you listen to this whole thing, or if you decide to do your due diligence, oh, I'm clearly drunk. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if you can request the whole transcript or stuff like that, but there's ways to figure out how to listen to everything if you want to do that. If you just want to be a person where you just listen to the headlines and now you've come to your conclusion, then you know, that's fine. But you know, if you're going to be passionate about, you know, this case or other cases, or just in general, and have a stand by something, then I feel like you need to do the research. And that's the reason we did the research for you, Ala. We were there the whole time, and we gave you all the information. Have you created your now Instagram and Twitter new name?
Yes.
Okay.
The Black Letter Law on Instagram, and the Black Letter Law on the YouTube.
Perfect. You have to get Twitter as well, but we can discuss that later. But here it is. Just again, before we get out of here, make sure you guys like and subscribe. I don't really do too much content on this page, but I might start for 2023. We'll see what happens. I might convince Alfie to do maybe a law situation where we take hip hop cases and we break it down. That may or may not be interesting. We'll see. But if you did find this interesting, please like and subscribe and put comments out there. Hit up Alfie. I guess, I mean, if they have questions about their cases, can they hit you up? Or what can they hit you up about? Like, what can they hit you up about? Because I don't want to send people and you're like, no, I don't, that's not my, I don't do that. What can people hit you up about?
So right now, I think if you have any questions, like if you didn't understand some of the procedural things that happened in the case, I'd be happy to explain that.
If I have a case going on and I'm like, Alfie, like this is scenario, this is the deal, I'm going to court next week.
Nope. Because what a lot of times people will have attorneys already, and you know, they'll reach out and say, hey, you know, XYZ is happening. What does that mean? And it's like they just really want to be able to talk to, have something intelligent to say to their attorney. Like, well, my other lawyer said this or that, like I don't get it.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have any questions about this case in particular, yes. And we'll see we'll see what happens, but I'm not giving out any legal advice like that.
Okay. Because I think that's what most people would come for. That's what I would come for. Oh, she a lawyer and she looks like me. Can you help me with this? I think that's what people make.
No, okay. My first question is going to be, who's your lawyer? Who's your lawyer? What state are you in? Why don't you have a lawyer? How many lawyers have you spoken with? And then this is my retainer.
Okay. Well, there it is. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. My name is TK Trinidad. Again, if you're catching the tail end of this, you might want to rewind back to at least halfway through. We just broke down the Tory Lanez case, the People versus Daystar Patterson. And that is it for tonight. If there is other content you guys want us to review, just, in a legal standpoint, and me just being a host because I'm not a lawyer, we can definitely possibly do that. Other than that, that is it. Happy 2022. 2023. Make sure you get those vision boards out. Make sure you have where you want to go with your life, career, and happiness, and all that good stuff. And
oh my God, the Black Letter Law coming up on Instagram. So perfect. Boom. I am. So TK, follow me. That's one person that I'm following myself. And Cliff, go ahead and follow me.
Boom. There it is. So we'll definitely work on some more content, possibly. Don't hold me to that. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the flip side in 2023.
Bye, guys.
TK Trinidad.